Story 1. I bought my family expensive Christmas gifts, but their cruel prank on me and my girlfriend made me take everything back, even from the kids. In the past couple of years, I started making good enough money that I bought a house, and I still have plenty after the monthly bills. My family have all been pranksters and, at times, entitled my whole life, but Christmas Eve they took the cake. I was no contact, and see, with them for years, but they convinced me to reconnect after I moved closer. For gifts, I got them all good stuff like tablets for the kids with built-in DVD players, sports memorabilia and camping stuff for my dad, brother, and uncle, and specific antiques, jewelry, and appliances for my mom, sister-in-law, SIL, and aunt. I brought my girlfriend with me, as what little family she has are horrid, so she was delighted to spend Christmas Eve with my family. Everything was going smoothly, and I warned my family no pranks on me or my girlfriend at all. They swore none would happen, but they could not resist. We got attacked by silly string from multiple fronts. That stuff reeks and gets everywhere. Somehow we powered through that, but then came the gifts. I wasn't expecting much, but none of them even tried. I got dollar store cooking utensils, a pair of insanely ugly holiday socks that I confirmed were also dollar store, and a pink hat, and that was just for my parents. They all kept snickering and recording me as I unwrapped random junk, one being a used mirror to a car I no longer own. The one gift there for my girlfriend was a bottle of fart spray. I told them I'd had enough and they'd agreed to no pranks. Long story short, they weren't just gag gifts. They were the only presents there for us. I had enough and just started gathering up all the presents I'd brought. They all freaked out and demanded I give them back. I told them all that they didn't change one bit and they could kiss all of that stuff goodbye. We bagged everything and stormed out. The family keep calling and messaging me that I'm being greedy. I couldn't take a joke. They couldn't think of anything to get me, and the kids are crying. I don't need to go on. Comments. Comment 1, NTA. It's not like you didn't warn them. Time to go and see with them again. Anything you can't return to the shop it came from to get your money back, or that you can't use yourself, give to a charity and tell them that's what you did. Comment 2, NTA. What is wrong with your family? A prank is only funny if appreciated by everyone involved, and you warned them that you didn't want to partake in anything like that. Furthermore, how is it funny to get a loved one awful gifts without a genuine present at the end? Your family aren't pulling pranks, they're just being awful. You did the right thing by taking away their presents, and while there's not much hope for the adults involved, maybe the kids might learn a valuable lesson about messing around and finding out. Not that they're to blame in all of this, but a point must be made. Update. My girlfriend recently saw my original post and asked that I update here. I previously posted in another subreddit about what my family did to me on Christmas Eve. Back at work, word of what happened with my family spread around the office when it shouldn't have. I talked about it to just one friend at lunch a few days after making my first Reddit post, and the office gossip just happened to be hiding nearby, listening to every word I said. Within days, it was all over the office, and someone in the office was apparently social media friends with my brother. In short, my family found out about my Reddit post, and they went off about how they thought I was a brat who couldn't take a joke. I told them the 400+ NTA comments said otherwise. Then they tried to say I didn't tell the truth. I asked them to read the post over the phone and tell me what in it was a lie. Well, their recollection was suddenly quite bad because I made it clear every detail was on point. I even still have the messages from them confirming numerous details. They tried gaslighting, but I wasn't having it. I was never going to let them try to rewrite history again. My mother resorted to crocodile tears and guilting, but I called her and my father out as self-serving narcissists who played favorites and would rather make me the bad guy so they wouldn't have to feel bad about themselves. They didn't deserve to berate me or cry for sympathy when they were complicit in my misery since childhood. Then I hung up on them. They tried calling back again and again, but I refused to pick up, and I deleted all of their voicemails, but I kept the texts just in case I'd need to go to a lawyer. More people in the extended family were made aware after links to my Reddit account got around. Initially, some sided with my parents and brother, but quickly switched sides when they saw the writing on the wall. My parents then tried to turn my brother into the new scapegoat for the situation since it couldn't be me, and then it turned into a chicken fight. After about 2 weeks, my parents showed up at my door to try and get me to talk to them, but I refused. I found out later that other relatives called them 50-plus-year-old children, and that they owed me a lifetime of apologies. My brother apparently doubled down that what they did was funny and refused to admit any wrongdoing, but his wife and even his own kids were furious at him. He was made to delete the videos he recorded of me at Christmas by the rest of the family, and he blamed me for it because I ruined his best prank yet. Maisol ended up slapping him and calling him a man-child, then saying she'd never been so humiliated to be his wife. She was apparently unaware of what my family put me through growing up until the Christmas prank because I'd hardly seen her before cutting contact with my family. Then she gave him an ultimatum: marriage counseling and a sincere apology to me, or she would leave him. My brother stubbornly refused, and his wife took the kids and left for a few days. He then came to my house while intoxicated and yelling that it was all my fault and I was a baby who couldn't take a joke. Then he started demanding I talk to his wife and fix things. I had to call our parents to come get him before I had police take him away. They showed up mortified and screaming at him to shut the hell up. After a few more days, my parents begged me to come over and speak to them. It took me a while to agree, and when I did, my brother was there with them, looking like a kicked puppy. His wife had actually gone to get a consultation from a divorce lawyer, and my brother finally realized this was for real, and unless he acknowledged he was a massive a-hole, his life would be ruined. His wife did come back for the sake of keeping the kids in school, but even after months, my brother is still in the doghouse. My brother and parents apologized and admitted they never expected me to show up with such nice gifts and figured I wasn't likely to bring anything since I hadn't seen them in years. And they pranked me so much that it finally clicked with them why I'd previously gone no contact. And even though I showed up with real gifts, they went ahead with their plan anyway since the prank gifts were already there under the tree, and they somehow thought I'd share in the humor. They thought wrong. I told them they would never be apologizing like this if they weren't being humiliated for their actions, to which they actually agreed and started trashing themselves. Then I asked if the apologies they'd given me before were totally insincere and just a ploy to lure me back into the family. They couldn't say they were or weren't. I'm not sure even they know anymore. So then I had a very frank discussion with them about my childhood and why I might never want to associate with them ever again. They didn't argue with a single point I made. All the mistreatment, all the favoritism, all the scapegoating. Why? Because I was the unwanted child. I didn't ask to be born. And it sure as hell shouldn't have taken that long just for them to realize what kind of steaming piles of crap they were as people. They just sat there looking at the floor while I ranted at them, and my mother was crying and blaming herself and my father started blaming her and saying it all started with her. My brother, for once in his life, knew when to shut the hell up and accept fault, and when he finally did speak, he owned up to everything. Since it was too late to return the gifts to the store by the time I'd made my original post, the presents I took back were left in my garage, just sitting in a pile. I ended up donating all of them to a local church for a charity sale, so all of that stuff went to people other than my relatives. I was chastised by many for taking the gifts back from the kids too, but they were sharing in the delight of laughing at me that day, and now they have a lesson in consequences that it was good to have while still young. That said, my mother kind of negated that by going rogue and bought the exact same tablet DVD combo players for the kids that I did. My father was apparently furious with her at first because she put it all on their credit card. Each of those tablets was around $150, but the fight about it didn't last long. My brother and Sil have been going to marriage counseling, and it's forced my brother to open his eyes. Our parents raised him to be the way he is, but he also kept it up well into adulthood. I've kept moderate contact with my family for the sake of getting to know my nibblings, and they're actually good kids. They don't blame me for taking the gifts back anymore because they understand how angry I was at Christmas. I had my birthday in March at a local pizza parlor, and my family were invited. It was literally their last chance, and shockingly, they did not blow it. They couldn't figure out what to get me, so they gifted me a large card with $100 cash in it, and a "We owe you a better apology" written in the card. They also gave my girlfriend a set of sterling silver earrings with a big apology as a make-up for Christmas since she'd refused to see them in person till then. It hasn't really been long enough since then for me to have any other kinds of details other than things seem to be pleasantly normal now. No more pranks to me. They've even stopped doing them to each other. The whole situation just ruined what made it funny for them to begin with. Also, For all those who previously commented or DM'd me saying tablet/DVD player combos don't exist. Look them up, for crying out loud. They do exist, and kids who have them love them. The ones my mother got my nibblings have barely left their hands since getting them. Lastly, I did report the office gossip that caused me to get ratted out to my brother to HR, and that was just one thing in a line of complaints against them, so they were finally written up and have been avoiding me as much as possible at work since then. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Wife refuses to discipline her spoiled son, who bullies my less fortunate son over his hobo clothes, from the thrift store. I, 45M, am married to my wife, 47F. We both have teen sons from previous relationships. Her son, Noah, 14, and my son, Spencer, 15. Spencer's biological mom, my ex, is a deadbeat who doesn't pay child support and hasn't spoken to Spencer in years. Noah's biological dad, on the other hand, is very involved in Noah's life and takes him every other week. Noah's dad also makes a fair bit more money than either my wife or I, and this leads to Noah having nicer things than Spencer. For example, Noah has a fairly new iPhone, while Spencer has an old model with a cracked screen. Noah's dad has promised to pay his way through college, while Spencer works 2 part-time jobs by his choice to start saving up, but will still probably have to take out loans. Most relevant to our current problem is that Spencer wears almost exclusively second-hand thrift clothes, while Noah's dad buys him department store brand clothes. Because of the difference in the way the two boys dress, Noah has taken to making fun of Spencer for looking like a hobo, like he crawled out of a gutter, and like trailer trash. These are just nasty, unnecessary, and, in my opinion, very classist insults. It's not like Spencer doesn't put effort into his appearance either. We just don't have the money to fill his closet with $130 t-shirts and $75 pairs of jeans. Now, Spencer has a bit of a temper, and the difference between his things and Noah's things is a sore spot. As a result, the boys have gotten into several shouting matches and one major physical altercation. Spencer is tall for his age, and Noah hit puberty late, so it was more of a beat-down than a fight, though no one went to the hospital. I've spoken to my wife multiple times about disciplining Noah, but she insists that he's just doing it to get a reaction out of Spencer, and the solution is for Spencer to stop falling for it, rather than any consequences or even a strong conversation for Noah. I may have accepted this if Noah was in elementary school, but he's a teenager, and a teenager needs to be at least told not to antagonize his stepbrother, who he knows has outbursts. I've tried to talk to Noah myself, but he just says, "You're not my dad. You can't tell me what to do." And yes, I have talked to Spencer about keeping his temper in check, but at this point, it's not his fault when he's constantly being demeaned for something he has no control over. So, after the aforementioned physical incident, I gave my wife an ultimatum. Discipline Noah or I'm leaving. I told her that I couldn't keep my son in a home where he's constantly on edge because she refuses to parent her son. I told her that, as a step-parent, I have little authority over Noah, so it's on her to set him straight. She asked me if I was seriously considering divorcing her over the way she parents her son, and I said yes, that this isn't about her, but about protecting my son from Noah's bullying. She told me I was being manipulative and that threatening divorce over every little thing is abusive. I tried to explain that this wasn't a little thing, and she just told me to give her a few days to think things over. I agreed to give her a week before I would contact a lawyer. More info. As I said, I've tried to talk to Noah, but he's like a brick wall. He won't listen to anyone except his mom and dad. I tried to take his phone once for an unrelated reason, and his mom and dad blew up on me for stealing, and my wife basically told me that I have no right to do anything to him because he's not biologically mine. I don't feel like I have the right to mess with their custody arrangement and tell her that Noah is welcome only on weekends or something like that. I felt like taking the nuclear option, divorce, would get her attention and take the issue seriously. Honestly, this was a test, and depending on how she took or didn't take action from my threat, I would weigh our relationship. I admit that my relationship with my wife needs work, but my son is my priority, and I'm not willing to keep him in a house with a bully while my wife and I work on things. Also, when Spencer beat Noah after he had enough, my wife didn't want to involve the cops because no one got hurt bad enough to require a doctor's visit, and because she considered it a scuffle between brothers. I've told my son that he needs to control his anger, and I don't tell him he's a victim. I don't condone violence for my son, but at this point, my son was at his breaking point, so I don't blame him in the least. Also, Noah threw the first punch, so yes, I am proud of my son for standing up for himself. Finally, some people here are acting like wearing thrifted clothes is some kind of child abuse, but really the only difference between my son's clothes and my stepson's clothes is the brand name and where they were purchased. I wear thrift clothes and so does my wife. It wasn't an issue until Noah decided it made him superior. Date 1. First off, as per everyone's advice in my last post, I've gotten in contact with a divorce lawyer and have begun to draft papers. Whether or not they'll be filed remains to be seen. Second, I didn't think I'd be updating so soon, but there's been a major development. Yesterday, Noah's father, who I'll be calling Mike, called me. We have each other's numbers, but we generally don't speak, so this was a surprise. I picked up, greeted him, and asked what was up. He told me he was calling because of the fight our boys got into and asked me if I knew anything about it. So I told him that I did know about it and that, thankfully, neither boy was hurt badly. Then he tells me, "Good. That's good to hear. Listen, from the way Noah tells the story, your boy Spencer, attacked mine over some petty argument over clothes. Now, I know my boy can exaggerate, so I figured I'd call to get it from you." So I tell him what I know and say, "Yeah, well, now I don't mean to call Noah any kind of liar, but that's only half the story. See, lately, your boy has taken to picking on mine because you can afford to dress him in more expensive clothes. Now, I'm glad that Noah can have the clothes he wants thanks to you, but he's decided that makes him superior to Spencer. Noah called him a hobo, trailer trash, told him he looked like he crawled out of a gutter, and said he wouldn't be surprised if Spencer ended up on the street in 5 years. Mike was surprised that his son would say things like that and assured me that that is not the type of thing he teaches him in his house. Then he asked me to tell him more, so I continued with, "Right, now my boy can have a temper, and I'm working on that with him." "Sure." But Noah wouldn't listen when I told him to knock it off. There have been a few yelling fights, and then a couple of days ago, Noah just kept winding him up, and they were shouting at each other, and then Noah swung, and, well, the rest is history. Now, Mike was really surprised that Noah was the first to use his hands. I confirmed that was the case, but also clarified that it wasn't a fair fight at all because Noah didn't get another chance, and Spencer did the rest. I told Mike that I was glad neither got hurt too bad, and then I told him, "Let me be frank, your boy is causing problems in my house, and he needs to stop before he gets put in the hospital. Could you talk to him about it? Sherry, my wife, won't address this, but our relationship is a whole other deal." And then Mike said, "Oh yeah, for sure. I'll talk to him. And also, so long as no one goes to the hospital, feel free to let your boy set mine straight, if you know what I mean." That's how I learned to stop being a mouthy little. Maybe a little schoolyard justice will do the same for him. I was really appreciative of Mike's approach and told him that I'd pass his message to Spencer, but that I'd honestly prefer less violence in my house. He said he agreed, that he was disappointed in Noah, and apologized for his behavior with Spencer. Then we hung up. Anyway, Noah goes to Mike's place tomorrow, so hopefully his father can straighten him out. As for my relationship with my wife, I'll be having a serious sit-down with her soon. If we can't work things out, that lawyer of mine will come in handy. And yes, I did tell Spencer what Mike said about setting Noah straight, but I made it clear that Spencer is not to start anything. But if Noah gets physical first, Spencer has my permission to shut him down. Update 2. So some of you suggested that Sherry and I have a family meeting with Mike and the boys, and I figured it was worth a try. I called Mike and he said it was a great idea, but Sherry didn't want to because her divorce from Mike was so chaotic, and she didn't want to make things awkward. Took some convincing, but she caved eventually. I won't go into the little details, but basically Mike and I tried to explain to Noah and Sherry why what Noah had been doing was wrong and deserved punishment. But Sherry was being really stubborn and ended up with Mike deciding to take all of Noah's clothes away and give him $100 to make his wardrobe for all of the coming school year, with it reduced down by $15 for each time he insulted Spencer. A moot point now, but he didn't know that at the time. Sherry was of course opposed, but there was not much she could do. Mike took Noah and left. Spencer got picked up by my mom, and then I got into it with Sherry. It started out civil, talking about parenting philosophy and our different experiences with bullying and the like. She just wouldn't calm down though, and we had the biggest fight of our relationship. I admit I was a bit at fault too for not backing down. What can I say? I'm one stubborn ass. It was an hours-long screaming match that was basically her defending Noah and saying he has a right to his words because he's smaller, younger, and because he had to go through his parents' messy divorce and he has emotional trauma. I don't actually know if this is true, but to be frank, I don't care. I yelled back that Spencer's mom is a deadbeat, so you and your excuses. In the end, it devolved into petty insults and ended with her throwing a lamp at me while screaming that she'd rather bang her coworker. I ran out of the house and drove to my mom's place. Anyway, a couple of days later, this somehow all got back to Mike, who invited me out for a drink, and I obviously said yes because I really needed one at that point. We got to talking about Sherry, and it turns out you all were right about their divorce too. According to Mike, he left her because they got into a huge fight after he caught her poking holes in their condoms. She wanted another kid, but he didn't, and she was trying to get her away with an oops baby. They didn't even have a prenup. She just managed to blow through all the money she had gotten from him before I met her. So yeah, suffice it to say I'm glad I got myself snipped a while ago. Anyway, I filed the divorce papers and I'm devastated, but I know it's for the best. My life, and thanks for listening to my ranting, internet strangers. Also, I'd be happy just to be drinking buddies with Mike. He's really cool, and considering the shit I'm about to get into, I'm gonna need someone to drown my feelings with. 2 weeks ago, I would never have imagined it would come to this, but leaving her feels like a weight off my shoulders, honestly. Like I said, I'm just glad we don't have any kids together. This will be my last update. I'm gonna focus on screwing her over as badly as I can. Seriously, EFFU, Sherry. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My wife cheated with a coworker and blamed me for not being good in bed while I was still grieving my parents who just passed away in a car accident. My wife, Gigi, and I have been together for the past 4 years. Our relationship has been pretty much perfect, or so I thought. We share similar interests like playing video games and going camping whenever we get a chance. We both have good-paying jobs, and we both never want kids. Gigi is extremely independent, which is the primary reason why I fell in love with her in the first place. We dated for 10 months before we moved in together. Gigi and I have talked to each other about our past, and she knows that I strongly dislike people who cheat. She expressed the same sentiment also and told me how her ex-boyfriend broke her heart when she found him cheating with one of his exes. I was glad that we were on the same page regarding this. I like being loyal and available to my partner, and Gigi was the same way in the beginning. However, after we got engaged, something changed in her. One day while we were drinking, she broached the subject of whether we could get one free pass in our relationship. At first, I didn't understand what she was talking about, but then she went on to explain how a free pass is basically when you are allowed to sleep with a celebrity or someone whom you find extremely attractive, and your partner won't consider it as cheating. She asked me if I would ever consider having a free pass in our relationship. I laughed and shook my head, as this thought had never even crossed my mind. I told her a free pass is nothing but cheating, and if she ever wanted a free pass, then I would rather prefer that she left me. Hearing this, Gigi went quiet, and we continued to drink. I didn't think much of this after that day. However, I think this was the first red flag in our relationship. Months later, Gigi approached me saying how she had a colleague who was extremely attractive and had been incessantly asking her out for quite some time. And one day during their office party, she had given in and kissed him just to shut him up. She told me that she had felt extremely guilty about it and wanted to tell me, but her friends had dissuaded her from telling me the truth since they thought that I would not understand. My first thought was that what this guy did was basically coerce her. So, I told her that she needed to immediately report him and that she could file an HR complaint against him because this is a really serious issue. However, Gigi tried to brush it off, saying that it wasn't a big deal, which made me a bit suspicious. I asked her why she even told me this if she thought it wasn't a big deal to begin with. Gigi told me how she thought she wanted me to spring into action and perhaps take matters into my own hands by confronting the guy just like all her exes have done, and that she found it unattractive to see that I wanted her to go to HR instead. She then grumbled that I didn't love her enough and how she would have confronted the woman if I had ever kissed someone else. At this point, I could not fathom why Gigi was twisting the situation like this. It felt like I was being manipulated into a scenario that made no sense. How could she expect me to react the same way as her exes? It was as if she couldn't handle the idea of me handling the situation in a rational and responsible manner. Her insistence on making it a test of my love for her left a bitter taste in my mouth. I told her firmly that if she didn't report this to HR, then I would assume that she had kissed the guy out of her own free will and not because she was coerced to do so, which means it was cheating and I could not marry someone like that. Hearing this, Gigi's expression shifted from frustration to disbelief. She asked me if I was serious, and I nodded, reiterating that I couldn't handle cheating. We did argue for a bit where she kept saying how everyone would look at her differently if she complained against the guy and outed him, but I didn't care and I reminded her that she should not care either if what she had told me was true. In the end, she reported to HR and apparently it was a big deal just as anyone would expect. They ended up firing the guy and assured Gigi that she did the right thing. I was glad that Gigi stood up for herself. However, a week later, I received a message from a stranger. He claimed that he was the guy who Gigi had kissed. In his message, he had written how Gigi had kissed him out of her own consent and that he never did anything wrong. He alleged that Gigi apparently never wore the engagement ring in the office, so he had no idea that she was even engaged, nor did her friends ever bring it up, which is why he had thought it right to pursue her. He told me that he wanted nothing from me but to just inform me of the truth and apologize for kissing my girlfriend. Obviously, I never replied back to his message because this guy had been fired anyway. And at that time, I believed Gigi over him. 2 months later, Gigi and I got married at our dream venue. It was a beautiful ceremony, and we took our vows in front of our parents and the rest of our families. The start of our marital life was pure bliss. Everything was going smoothly until I discovered something incriminating in her laptop. One day, while she was out grocery shopping, my laptop was getting charged upstairs. So, I opened her laptop to check our flight details since our trip was coming up. In Safari, under Frequently Visited, I saw a Reddit account page that got me curious, and I clicked on it without thinking much. This is how I discovered that Gigi had this Reddit account which she had never told me about, where she would exchange inappropriate pictures with a random stranger. I went through the pictures, and in all her pictures she had cropped out her face and he had done the same. Their messages were not lovey-dovey either and were purely sexual. But what struck me was how she had shamelessly discussed our sex life with this complete stranger. I was at a loss for words. When she came back, I confronted her, and she went pale as a sheet when she realized that I had found her account. I asked her to explain herself because I was so disgusted by the pictures. She hesitated for a moment, her eyes darting nervously before finally meeting mine, and then slowly, hesitantly, she began to speak. She confessed to finding it exciting to send her pictures to a stranger and to engage in conversations with him that she knew were forbidden. She told me how it was basically like porn and that it meant nothing to her. She tried to justify saying how she had never confessed any love for him and that sending pictures with her face cropped out wasn't a big deal because he would never find out who she actually is. I struggled to comprehend her reasoning, to understand what would make her behave this way. I asked her why would she even need to do this if it was because she wasn't satisfied in our marriage. But Gigi shook her head vehemently, her eyes pleading for understanding as she tried to argue that it wasn't like that and that this was just a stupid thing that meant nothing to her. She kept saying that she loved me and pleaded with me to let this go as this is nothing more than an embarrassing incident and promised me that she would delete the Reddit account immediately. I wanted to scream, to lash out in fury and frustration, but instead I remained silent as I tried to process this new information. There was nothing left to say, no words that could undo the damage that had been done. I have to admit that after this, our sex life did suffer because I felt so betrayed and hurt. I struggled to find the desire to be close to her, to let down my guard and allow myself to be vulnerable again. The thought of being intimate with her filled me with a sense of dread. Gigi sensed my hesitation, my reluctance to bridge the divide that had grown between us. She tried to reach out to mend what was broken, but her efforts were not enough. Every time I looked at her, I could picture her messages with the guy in my head, and it really did not help. Just a week after this, I received even worse news. While I was at the office one morning, my parents had met with a car accident and were critically injured. I could not believe it, and it was as if the ground had suddenly disappeared beneath my feet, leaving me suspended in a void of shock and despair. I raced to the hospital to check on my parents as fast as I could. I was informed by the doctors that they were on life support because their organs were failing. The doctors told me honestly that the chance of them surviving this was less than 50%. I remember just sitting in the waiting room for hours on end, hoping that they would miraculously wake up. Gigi did come and sit by my side in silence, holding my hand. I kept praying fervently for a miracle, for some sign of improvement, but my parents' condition never improved. My mother was the first one to go, and she was quickly followed by my father. The only thing that reassured me was that even in their death, they could be together. I collapsed on the ground, just crying until my tears ran dry. My heart was shattered into a million irreparable pieces, and I did not know how to go on living after this. The funeral was really difficult for me because I just didn't know how to maintain my composure in front of others. I have to admit that during this time, Gigi took care of everything. She allowed me to mourn over the loss of my parents while she made all the arrangements. In the aftermath of their funeral, I withdrew into myself, cocooned in a shell of numbness. Unable to articulate the magnitude of my pain, I found myself trapped in a suffocating embrace of grief and depression. I did not have the energy to even complete simple tasks and would lie in bed the whole day mourning my parents and my childhood. My parents had been my rock, and losing them felt like I had lost a piece of myself, too. I did meet up with my parents' lawyers who told me that my parents had left behind everything that they owned to me, which was not surprising, honestly. But what did surprise me was that the collective asset amounted to $2 million. I was shocked, but then it made me even sadder, realizing that my parents had worked hard their entire lives. Yet they didn't live long enough to enjoy it. I never told Gigi or any of my family about my inheritance because I didn't even have the right state of mind at that time to think about the money. However, I did decide to take a long leave of absence from my company now that I didn't really have to worry about money. And since I had been a loyal employee for a long time, my boss graciously agreed to give me the break I needed to grieve my parents. However, just 2 weeks after my parents had passed away, Gigi approached me one evening and told me that she wanted to talk to me about something really important. We sat down in the living room where she started to tell me that she had had enough of seeing me mope around and that I needed to get my ass up and go to therapy. Gigi told me that my behavior wasn't normal and that nobody mourns so much over the loss of their parents. She asked me to man up and stop crying. I was shocked by how cruel her words were. So, I tried to reason with her how my grief was not a choice and that grieving for my dead parents for a month is perfectly normal for any human being. I reminded her how she had grieved for her childhood dog for months on end, and I had never questioned her, so she had no right to behave with me this way. She was pissed and grumbled about how unattractive it was to watch me cry. There was more back and forth, but eventually she let it go, so I thought this would be the end of it. Recently, my cousin Joseph messaged me asking if I was doing well. Joseph and I have been pretty close growing up, so it wasn't unusual for him to check up on me. However, he then went on to ask if my wife and I were currently separated. I was confused by his question, and I replied back that my wife and I were still together. I didn't think much of his inquiry at the time, chalking it up to curiosity or maybe even concern, but he then called me immediately. So I picked up his call. Joseph went on to tell me that he had just spotted my wife coming out of a hotel with a man, and that the man and my wife had hugged each other tightly before walking away in opposite directions. He told me that the way they hugged each other was not like the way friends do, which is why he had questioned me as to whether me and Gigi were still together. I reiterated again that she and I were very much together, and I assured him that when she came back home, I would ask her about it. However, my cousin, being the more paranoid one, dissuaded me from asking her. He told me that it was better for me to go through her phone and check if she was cheating on me because, according to him, if she was already sleeping with this guy, there was a chance that she wouldn't even accept it. I hate to admit it, but his words did make sense since Gigi did kiss a coworker and had even shared inappropriate pictures with a complete stranger. So, I thought it was better for me to investigate a bit before confronting her. And that is exactly what I did. I went through her laptop and her phone, but I found nothing. There were no inappropriate messages or calls to anyone. I was starting to doubt my cousin and thought maybe he had mistaken someone else for Gigi. However, that weekend while me and Gigi were sitting on the sofa watching TV, I heard a phone vibrate. I looked around and noticed that neither my phone nor her phone had received any notifications. Gigi must have seen me looking around because she suddenly excused herself to go to the washroom. I racked my head in confusion as I was positively sure that I had heard a phone vibrate. And this is when it struck me that maybe Gigi had another phone. When she came out of the washroom, I noticed a phone-shaped bulge in the side pocket of her sweatpants, which pretty much proved my suspicion. The fact that my wife had bought another phone and had not even informed me was suspicious to begin with. But now that I knew she had received a message and rushed to the washroom, I had even more reasons to believe that she was in fact cheating on me. However, like last time, I didn't want to just confront her. This time, I wanted to catch her in the act and confront the guy so I could find out his side of the story as well. I talked with my cousin, who immediately agreed with my plan. He told me about the hotel where she had met with this guy. So throughout the week, I waited around the hotel patiently to catch her in the act. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday passed, but she was not seen. So I assumed maybe she was meeting up with a guy at another hotel. On Thursday, things worked out in my favor. I saw my wife entering the hotel during the afternoon, which was supposed to be her lunchtime, and immediately behind her was another guy who I felt like I had seen somewhere, but I just could not place him. I waited 15 minutes before entering after them. I informed the receptionist that I was waiting for a guest. He offered to call the room, but I chuckled and told him that it was not needed. 40 minutes later, I saw them exiting the elevator together, their faces flushed with excitement and anticipation. My heart sank as I watched them, knowing what I was about to confront. Summoning every ounce of courage I had left, I approached them, my hands trembling with anger and betrayal. My wife's eyes widened in shock as she saw me, and she stopped dead in her tracks. Before she could utter a word, I held up my hand, silencing her protest. I didn't need to hear her excuses. I had seen enough. Turning to the man beside her, I asked him if he knew who I was. He nodded and told me that he had seen me at the office Christmas party last year, and that I was apparently her ex-husband since she had told him that we were currently separated. I stared at him blankly as he went on to tell me that he would have never gotten involved with her in any way if he knew that she was still married. I asked him if he worked with Gigi and he nodded, telling me that they were co-workers. Anger surged through me like wildfire as I realized that my wife had once again cheated on me with a co-worker. Without a word, I turned on my heels and walked away, leaving them standing there in stunned silence. As I drove home, the weight of what I had witnessed settled over me like a suffocating blanket. My marriage was over, shattered beyond repair by the betrayal of the woman I had loved and trusted above all others. When I reached home, I began to pack my bags immediately. I was so pissed and heartbroken with everything going on in my life. Gigi had apparently driven after me, so she walked into the house huffing and puffing. She found me packing my bags upstairs and immediately confronted me. She told me that she had made a terrible mistake and begged me for forgiveness. She went on to say how lonely she had felt, and in her desperation, she had decided to lie to this coworker about us getting a separation since she didn't want to be known as the cheating wife around her office. She told me that she had wanted to come clean to me for a very long time, but was afraid of my reaction. I yelled at her to get out of my face as I just could not bear to hear any more of her lies. I knew with certainty that had I not caught her red-handed that day, she would have continued to sleep with him. Gigi then changed her tactics and started telling me how I could not blame her entirely for everything and I needed to accept that this was my fault. Also, I stopped packing and looked at her because I could not believe the audacity she had to even suggest such a thing. She went on to tell me how I hadn't slept with her for months on end after I found her messages on Reddit. And this had continued even after my parents passed away. I was so angry that I yelled at her that she had no right to blame me for her betrayal and that her actions were a choice she made regardless of the circumstances. I couldn't believe she was trying to shift the blame onto me, as if my grief and pain was somehow responsible for her infidelity. But Gigi persisted, her words cutting through the air like a knife. She accused me of neglecting her and of failing to fulfill my duties as a husband. She told me that I had become too boring while grieving my parents' death and went on to suggest that instead of walking out of the marriage, I should instead understand her perspective. She even went on to demand that we should think about opening up our marriage and that I was welcome to date other people if that was what I wanted. Hearing her words, I simply scoffed because I was so done with this woman. I packed my bag and before leaving, I informed her that I would be sending her the divorce papers. Currently, I'm staying with my cousin, and Gigi has called me a million times. Her messages range from apologizing to blaming me for ruining everything. She keeps saying that I should see things from her perspective and forgive her since she was just lonely. So here I am, Reddit, wondering if I'm the a-hole here. Am I to be blamed for pushing my wife to cheat on me just because I was mourning? Update 1. Wow. When I posted this, I thought this post would not even track. But seeing 300+ comments under my post has been mind-reeling. I didn't think my story was even that interesting, but watching you all fight in the comments has been entertaining. To all the people who are blaming me and saying I pushed my wife to cheat by not sleeping with her, well, I hope for your sake you never find yourself in a predicament like I did. I loved my wife and thought that she would never cheat on me. So, when I saw her inappropriate messages with a random stranger, it did affect me emotionally and mentally. I could not just forget everything and sleep with her as if everything was normal. 2 weeks later, when my parents passed away, sleeping with my wife was the last thing on my mind. It's like some of you have never gone through grief because if you have, you will know that everyone reacts differently, and losing my parents has been so crushing throughout all this. If my wife can't stay loyal to me and would rather sleep with someone else, then this is no way my fault. Yes, I did feel a bit guilty initially, but after talking to my cousins and reading some of the comments, I am convinced that this is 100% on my wife. She decided to sleep around because that was what she wanted. I have no regrets that I ended this marriage, and I have already talked to my divorce lawyer about everything. So we will be going forward with my decision. I have also had a conversation with my in-laws, Gigi's parents. They had no idea that she had cheated on me since she had conveniently left out that part and just told them that I had walked away because I was still sad about my parents. I informed them about everything that had happened, and they were just as furious with Gigi as I was. They have since assured me that they trusted me to make the right decision. Update 2. It's been 5 months since my last update. Sorry I could not update earlier as I have been quite busy going through all the legal proceedings for my divorce. I'm here to finally share a happy update. Gigi and I are finally divorced. That selfish woman tried to come after my assets during the divorce proceedings, but thankfully my lawyer was able to prove that she cheated on me, which allowed me to safeguard my assets, including the $2 million inheritance from my parents. Gigi, who had no idea previously that my parents had left me behind such a huge amount, tried to argue that she rightfully deserved half of it. However, the judge wasn't having it and refused her point blank. I have wasted no time in moving on with my life. Soon after I moved out, I met an amazing woman named Sarah on Bumble. She is a single mother who is absolutely amazing and has a lovely son named Jerry. Sarah lost her husband a year ago, so she understands the pain of loss and grief that I've been going through. We have connected on a deep level, bonding over our shared experiences and our mutual desire to create a happy, loving home for our families. Sarah is extremely hardworking, and her resilience and strength inspire me every day. I also admire the way she single-handedly takes care of her son. Jerry is a wonderful boy, full of energy and curiosity, and it's been a joy getting to know him. I am lucky and extremely grateful that both of them have accepted me into their lives. Meanwhile, I have moved out of my cousin's place and found a nice condo for myself. I've also returned back to my job since I like working there, and I don't want to sit around the house doing nothing. It has taken me some time to get used to living alone, but I have to admit that I don't hate it. Yes, it does get lonely sometimes, but I would rather be alone than be with a cheating partner. I've also been talking to a therapist so I can heal from my parents' death, as well as my past with Gigi so I can work on building a better future. I do miss my parents every day, and I hope that they are proud of me for walking away from a toxic marriage. I know my mother especially would have been furious with Gigi for cheating on me. Also, several of you had messaged me after my first update urging me to get an STD test, which I did. And thankfully, the results came back negative. It was a relief to have that peace of mind knowing that I hadn't been exposed to any additional risks due to Gigi's infidelity. Since the divorce and even during our divorce, Gigi has made several attempts to reach out to me, telling me how sorry she was. I have made it very clear to her that I have forgiven her for her past mistakes since there's no point in holding on to the grudge anymore. However, she has also tried to initiate meeting me after the divorce, and I immediately shut her down, telling her firmly that I have no interest in rekindling our relationship. I've told her that it's time for both of us to move on. I hope she understands that and stops bothering me. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my last update, and since a lot of you keep asking me for an update, I wanted to let you know that just recently, I took the next step in our relationship and asked Sarah to marry me. To my delight, she said yes, and we're now planning our future together as a family. I couldn't be more excited to embark on this new chapter of my life with Sarah and Jerry by my side. But this isn't the only update I have. Apparently, Gigi has been stalking me and Sarah on social media after our divorce, which I had no idea about because the very evening that Sarah posted our engagement pictures. Gigi tried to get in touch with me multiple times. I refused to pick up her call. So, she then sent me several messages asking me if it was true and how Sarah was just a gold digger who didn't really love me. I blocked her because her messages pissed me off and I didn't see any reason to stay in touch with her. However, this woman then ended up sending me a long email where she wrote about how I had tricked her all this while and that I was to be blamed completely for destroying our marriage. She wrote about how she had loved me so much, but I had broken her heart by not trusting her enough. She blamed me for divorcing her without even trying to make things work out with her and begged me to not marry Sarah, who was apparently very wrong for me. She wrote how she could not believe that I was back on my feet and that Sarah was going to get a much happier version of me. According to her, I was the one who got away. I felt exhausted reading her email since this woman sounded crazy, reiterating the same thing over and over again. I have blocked her on Gmail, so hopefully she doesn't create another email address just to bother me. Looking back on everything that happened, I realize now that I wasn't the one who got away. I was the one who escaped. I'm grateful that I could escape from a toxic relationship that was built on lies and betrayal. And now I'm finally free to live my life on my own terms with a partner who loves and respects me for who I am. With Sarah, I have found a love that is genuine, unconditional, and built on a foundation of trust and mutual respect. Together, we're building a future filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. And for that, I am truly grateful. To anyone out there who may be going through something similar, my advice is simple. Never settle for anything less than you deserve. Trust your instincts and never be afraid to walk away from a situation that no longer serves you. Life is too short to waste on people who don't appreciate you. Now on to the next story. Story 4. I found my girlfriend's mom's AirTag on my motorcycle after she suspected I was cheating. Then her parents showed up at my place in another country, and it only got worse from there. I'm 27M and my girlfriend is 33F. Although our relationship started out very intense and unpredictable, we quickly developed strong feelings and have been together for 3 years. Despite being together that long, I just met my girlfriend's parents for the first time a few weeks ago. She is an only child and said she didn't want to introduce anyone she dated to her parents unless she knew this was the person she wanted to marry. Her parents also live abroad, and due to COVID and her dad's health problems, they didn't visit her for a while. She usually went to visit them. It was a big step for her to tell me she wanted me to meet them, and I did my best to make a good impression. I was raised by my grandmother. When she passed, my older sister took over caring for me. My girlfriend has had a stable upbringing. Her parents are wealthy and she's led a privileged life. We don't have the same life experiences, and it was never a problem until I met her parents. If anything, for some reason, the differences between us added to our relationship in ways. Unfortunately, I got the impression her parents were scrutinizing every aspect of my life over the dinner we had on our first meeting, and this included my family. I stayed true to myself and maintained my confidence but left the interaction feeling like I bombed a test. My girlfriend reassured me they liked me, but her mood over the few days afterwards suggested otherwise. I called her out on it and pressed her for an explanation. I learned she's been upset because of a fight she had with her mother following the dinner. Her mother thinks I'm just having fun with her daughter, that I will get bored and leave her, and she's too old to be wasting time with me. Apparently, her mother got this impression entirely from the way I look, and this judgment about me trumps anything else I shared about myself. My girlfriend and I decided to have me spend more time with her family over the coming holidays, so I've been going over every day and involving myself in shopping trips, etc. with my girlfriend and her mom, hoping that she would get to know me and overcome whatever skepticism she has. I even spent hours getting a crash course in a strategy board game her dad plays and started playing with him to continue learning it as a form of bonding. Despite feeling like I won her dad over, I felt like her mom was constantly evaluating my loyalty in subtle, unrealistic ways. Examples include overanalyzing how I interact with others in public, reading too much into the way I smile, and the way I show affection toward my girlfriend. According to my girlfriend's mom, the fact that I have a motorcycle makes me extra, and that's how this escalated. My sister and I have an 18-year-old dog. It's been a tough few months for him. I think he's approaching the end. For that reason, usually one of us is always with him. He's on the smaller side, so he's easy to bring along anywhere. I've had to leave to give medicine to my dog at certain times of the day because he's on a schedule, and I guess my girlfriend's mom found even this to be suspicious. The other day, I left my girlfriend and her family to go give my dog his medicine, and on my way there, my phone alerted that an AirTag was traveling with me. When I reached my place, I searched all my pockets and stuff and eventually found it on the motorcycle itself. It was connected to my girlfriend's mom's number. I told my girlfriend, and my girlfriend said she put her mom's AirTag on my bike to prove to her mom that I was not lying about where I was going. I get that she was trying to defend me, but I feel angry at her. It's hard to articulate, but ever since I met my girlfriend's family, microaggressions by her mom are really getting to me, and it's hard to separate them from my girlfriend. Hoping I'm just overstimulated by all this and things will get better after Christmas is over. I'm not sure if I'm an a-hole for being cold toward my girlfriend about the AirTag, though, but it's a frustration that I'm having trouble letting go of. Date 1. We've been together for a few years and have discussed getting married. Unfortunately, ever since I met her parents last year, their behavior, specifically her mom, has made it difficult for me to see a future anymore. Her mom mistrusts me, and it's all based on superficial impressions and assumptions about who she thinks I am. I have tried to show her parents patience, and I've been extremely respectful, giving them opportunities to get to know me and overcome their prejudices. Everything came to a head when I went to visit my home country. I have a place here, and I came to see a friend get married. Her parents showed up unannounced and requested a ride from the airport. I immediately called my girlfriend despite the time difference because I was in shock. She claimed she had no idea about their plans. They claim it was all impromptu, cheap flight last minute, etc. I just don't buy it. Anyway, I picked them up and they're currently staying with me in my apartment. They've got no itinerary but want me to arrange them to see XYZ, and of course they need me as translator. Everything is apparently too foreign to them. They're lost without me. They refuse to go anywhere without me as an escort. My girlfriend is apologetic, but I just don't see her supporting me in dealing with her parents, especially her mom, who is the instigator. The dad has no backbone. He is forced to follow her. I posted another issue a while back too. My girlfriend doesn't support me in setting boundaries, so as her partner, I fall into a rock and a hard place type situation. I can't tell if I'm being cold and uninviting or if these people are crazy and my girlfriend is so afraid of them she didn't even warn me about something like this. I feel like I can handle anything if she's on my side, but it doesn't feel like she is. Maybe I can't be with someone like that. Update 2. January 19th, 2025. I just wanted to clarify some things. I only met my girlfriend's parents for the first time late November 2024. The reason I picked them up from the airport instead of abandoning them or telling them to go find a hotel, etc., was out of respect for my girlfriend and the relationship I wanted to have with her and her parents. After the first meeting I had with her parents in late November that I shared in my first post, I confronted my girlfriend. She apologized, and eventually her mother did too. Basically, I thought we were past whatever suspicions and mistrust her mother had about me. Then this happened. In the last few days since this began, I have realized some things about my relationship. My girlfriend has been trying to play both sides. She'll tell me one thing and her parents another thing. She's been hiding some deep trust issues about me and insecurities about our relationship, mostly her fears about me being unfaithful. I want to be clear that these fears are not because of anything that I've done. It's just how she feels. She used her parents to convince me it wasn't her craziness, and I am pretty sure she told her mom how she felt and her mom was willing to be in on it. I broke up with my girlfriend and asked her parents to leave. The friend's wedding I went to hit different because of that, but it also made me realize how unhealthy and toxic my relationship was. I haven't disclosed a lot, but I think I was in an abusive relationship. I am still struggling to accept that, and there is some shame creeping up that I don't understand why is it there. Anyway, thanks for all the messages. Sorry my writing skills aren't that great. I'm so drained from this situation I feel like I need to sleep for a month. I don't even feel like writing about any of this, but I felt I owed you the conclusion. Update 3, January 27th, 2025. To those who were worried my ex-girlfriend would trash my place, nothing like that happened. I talked to her in person. She said I was misunderstanding everything. She began to cry, which was difficult for me. There was a moment where I wanted to forget all of it so I could hug her. I held back because something felt different. She asked me if I hate her. Obviously, I don't. I said I am tired of feeling like the person I love is not who I thought they were. Ever since she introduced me to her parents and close friend circle, which I didn't talk about, I have seen a side of her I don't recognize. After meeting her parents for the first time and the strange behavior started to add up, I gave her an opportunity to come clean. I asked her to tell me everything. I told her I can't help you if you leave me in the dark. I even warned her if I find out later, it's over. Because of the way she chose to answer me during this conversation, every action I took, I held back. All she had to do was tell me what was going on. I would have helped her take on everything. Instead, she chose to trick me in cruel ways while acting helpless and innocent when I questioned her about it. I shielded her all this time. She manipulated everyone around her, including me. Everything is confusing now. I look back at all of our time together and feel crazy. I can't differentiate anymore her true feelings about anything. She tried to explain the stress of pleasing her friends and family made her act this way, but she doesn't share their views or doubts about me. She said she's never loved anyone the way she loves me and her feelings scare her. I wish she would just admit she had too much pride. I understand she is the way she is probably due to how she was raised, but some of the things she has said and done are unforgivable. The conversation went on, but everything was still other people's fault. She wasn't taking any accountability, so I stood by my decision to stay broken up. To be honest, by hesitating for even that singular moment when I wanted to hold her, she showed me the side of her that comes out when she doesn't get her way. For the first time, I felt like what I was seeing is actually her true self. We were having this conversation while walking outside. We had stopped walking and she was wiping her tears. When she realized I wasn't going to comfort her, she started to say degrading things about me. She also brought it up again that my life is easier than hers because I grew up with no parents. This comment was so unhinged it made me laugh. I told her she's so privileged she has no idea what it even means to have a hard life. Because I laughed, I could tell she wanted to throw her coffee at me. She didn't. Instead, she said some more things about me, and I realized I don't care anymore because I don't even recognize this woman who is yapping in front of me. Since then, she has emailed me an Excel spreadsheet of all the money I owe. The things she has itemized are things like all the time she upgraded me on a flight, luxury gifts she has bought me on birthdays, Christmas, etc. She also included ridiculous things like estimated cost of gas X amount of times when she was my designated driver, and pregnancy tests. I think she added this just to mess with me. I'm not going to bother explaining my contributions. This email made me sick. I packed her things that were in my apartment. I had a friend come over when she came to collect them. She didn't know this. I answered the door, and she pushed against me and tried to initiate intimacy. I didn't return her advance, and she got angry and scratched me. I think maybe she was trying to slap me but couldn't reach. I'm not really sure because it happened too fast, and I restrained her. My friend came out and began calling her on it. He made a show of taking a video and threatened her with assault. I think it embarrassed her, so she probably won't do something like this again. The only downside to his presence was I think she will try to convince herself I rejected her in that moment because he was there. For people asking about my dog, he's happy and comfortable and still alive. He eats well, unlike his age. My priorities are to improve the quality of his life, not unnecessarily prolong it. But every night I check on him before I fall asleep, and every morning I wake up with this feeling of dread. He has Cushing's disease and chronic pancreatitis. He is high risk for developing cancer. The medication routine is a bit complex, but I'm learning everything I can for him. Take care of your pets and check them often for lumps. A lot of animals hide their pain. I guess we have that in common. Maybe I shouldn't have ended the post like this. Anyway, I'm really okay. I posted this update because I got a lot of messages and it's easier than answering them separately. In case I don't feel like answering comments, I will just leave this here. There is a lot I haven't shared. There is a lot I haven't even admitted to myself yet. I am not saying I am perfect. It's not about being right or wrong anymore. I have a lot of flaws too. I'm sure I handled some things poorly, and I know I was a fool. I also still experience moments where my heart aches and I question if I'm wrong about everything, wanting to just get back together. Hopefully, this will get easier with time. Anyway, writing here counts as therapy, right? I'm gonna go drink a cold beer in the shower. Now on to the next story. Story 5. I warned my sister not to get pregnant when she and her husband were struggling, but she did it anyway. Then, she asked me for money for rent, but I said no, and now my whole family hates me. I declined to help my sister and her husband out with money a couple of days ago, and right now, literally my entire family is upset with me because of that. But I honestly can't figure out what I did wrong. So I'm here. The reason I decided not to help my sister and her husband was because I had initially advised them against something that they proceeded to do, and so I don't think I owe them anything since they had very blatantly ignored my advice. She and my brother-in-law have been together for 8 years. They're both 23 and got married about a year ago. Neither of them was particularly interested in college, and the only real plan that they had for the future was that they were going to get married after they graduated and had found a job. After both of them got hired by the same company as accountants, they got engaged, and soon after, they got married as well. Now, I've never really said anything about my sister's life, but every time that she would talk to me, I would always try to advise her to save for the future because she and her husband had a reckless lifestyle. But she always kept blowing off my advice and continued to live the way that she wanted. Constantly going out for dinner and partying, buying expensive clothes, and other things that they couldn't afford. She and her husband liked to live beyond their means, and honestly, if that was how they wanted to live it up, then that was their personal choice. I could only advise them, but I couldn't prevent them from doing what they wanted. But from what I had observed with most other people who had a similar lifestyle, it was bound to blow up in their faces one day. And the day that it backfired, I knew that I wasn't going to help them out because I had always advised her against this kind of life, and yet she had always ignored it. So, when she casually told me that she was planning on having a baby, I thought it was really risky because she was really young. I didn't think they had much savings, and if you had a kid, you could not continue to live the way that they did. I told her to think it through several times, but she told me that she would be fine. She had thought about it, and even though she was struggling with money at the time, she knew that she would have saved enough by the time the baby was actually born. She claimed that she had started to get bored of her life, and she knew that her baby was exactly what she needed to complete her family. Right now, since she was young and healthy, there was no better time to get pregnant than right now. So she went ahead with her plans and actively tried to get pregnant until she did. For context, even when she had told me that she was going to try and get pregnant, I had advised her against it because I knew that they were struggling with money. My parents had told me that she had been borrowing a lot of money from them since her husband wasn't on good terms with his in-laws and said that they were worried about her. And that's why I had felt like it was my duty as her older brother to warn her against getting pregnant since I knew that she was not in that position financially. So that's what has made my parents stand on the situation right now even more confusing for me. Since after I declined to help my sister out with rent, they have stopped speaking to me. Anyway, I even congratulated and was very happy for my sister and her husband when they announced that they were pregnant because I thought that they were finally going to clean up their act and start saving for the future. But even after that, they continued to live extravagantly. In the initial months of her pregnancy, I kept reminding her that she had to save money for after the baby was born. But after a while, She got really sensitive about it and told me that I didn't need to worry and that she had it all planned out. So that was my sign to keep my mouth shut because she clearly didn't want to hear my advice anymore. And after that, I would only speak to her about safe topics but wouldn't try to advise her. And recently, exactly what I had feared is what happened to them since they were running short on money for rent this month. My sister could have just as easily borrowed money from my parents, but she had already borrowed so much from them that this time they had to put their foot down. Since both of them were retired and couldn't afford to keep throwing away money after her, she already owed them a lot, and so she came to me to ask for help. My sister visited me a couple of days ago and told me that ever since her baby was born 2 months back, all her money went into raising him, and she barely spent anything on herself. So she was very confused as to why she and her husband were still struggling to come up with enough money to cover rent. I was confused as to why she was confused since the reason why they were struggling to cover rent was very clear to me. They had never bothered to save enough money for the future and had lived carelessly in spite of my constant warnings and reminders to save. They had never bothered to pay me any mind and had decided to live on their own terms. They had spent all their money on themselves, and now they had nobody to count on. My sister tried to ask me to help her out with rent this month and said that she would pay me back as soon as possible, but I declined. I said that I already knew that she owed a lot of money to our parents, so she couldn't even afford that right now. It was very unlikely that she would be able to return the money to me anytime soon, and I knew that just like she had done with my parents, she would make a habit out of this as well. Maybe my parents could support it since they had retired and had earned enough money in their lifetime to be able to give it away to her when she needed it, but right now I couldn't. I'm just 26 and I'm planning on starting my own business in a couple of months. So I have been saving for that all along, and I don't want to throw all of that away. Besides, I always warned her that her lifestyle would backfire one day, and that's exactly what happened. So I really don't feel obliged to help her out. And I told her that she had to think of some other solution since this was definitely not going to work. Obviously, she and I got into a really bad fight that day, and she called me all sorts of names. She said that I was selfish, I was a miser, and I was just jealous that she had been living better than I had, even on her income, which happens to be less than mine. She also went on to tell me that the reason that I would never be able to find anyone is exactly this. The fact that I don't even know how to live in the moment and I'm too self-centered to care about anyone. I had been expecting her to be quite nasty after I declined to help her, and she had lived up to those expectations, so I was not surprised. But I was also not going to take it quietly, so I hit right back, and the argument went on for about 15 minutes before I asked her to get out of my house. After she left, I blocked her phone number so she wouldn't even be able to call me anymore, and she didn't. But my parents did later that night. When they called me, I had honestly been expecting them to tell me that I did the right thing and that they had also reprimanded her and asked her to apologize to me. Instead, they started yelling at me and said that I was a terrible human being for treating her this way, and the least I could have done was help her out. I thought it was very unfair of them to say that, since initially they were the ones who had insisted that I speak to her about her ways and try to get her to fix her spending habits. I found it very confusing, and I told them that I had always warned her against spending so recklessly, and I had even told her not to get pregnant right now since she was not doing well financially. But in spite of that, she had done exactly whatever I had advised her against and ignored me entirely. That clearly meant that she did not respect me or my opinions, and if she didn't even respect me, I didn't understand why I had to spend my hard-earned money trying to help her out. It would be a different situation if she had fallen on hard times in spite of doing everything in her power to prevent it, but that was not the case here. She had created the situation on purpose, and now she had to suffer the consequences of it. I did not see anything unfair with what was happening to her, especially regarding my behavior towards her. But instead of trying to see where I was coming from, my parents doubled down on what they believed and said that they were shocked that I was refusing to help my sister when she was in such a tough spot. I got really upset that they were trying to villainize me, and I had already had a really bad argument with my sister earlier in the day, so I told them that I didn't have time for this and that if they wanted to paint me as being the bad guy, they were welcome to do so, but I was not about to help her out with any sort of financial assistance, and that was my final decision. Then I hung up on them while they were still in the middle of their sentence and went to sleep after turning my phone off. When I woke up in the morning, I hadn't exactly been expecting any apology from anyone, but I definitely hadn't been expecting them to still continue to harass me. Anyway, when I turned my phone back on, My sister hadn't texted me or tried to contact me, but my parents had left me a message saying that they couldn't believe that I was being so heartless and said that I could either help my sister out at this time and apologize to her for being so mean, or they would cut me out of the family. I actually had to read that message 2 to 3 times to realize that they were not even kidding. They were serious about cutting me off if I did not help my sister out. Then I called my parents up to talk about that message, and they told me that they were indeed quite serious, that if I did not send my sister money and apologize to her for my behavior, then they would never speak to me again. I was very upset and I actually started crying in spite of myself, but those were more angry tears rather than sad. I accused them of favoring her over me, and I told them that if they wanted to cut me off, then I would be happy because at least I would have the satisfaction of knowing that I did the right thing and I didn't have to bend my principles. They tried to turn it around on me and make it seem like I was the bad guy because my principles were more important than my family, but honestly, here they were just being unreasonable, and that's what I still believe. Anyway, a couple of days have passed since then, and I blocked my sister and my parents blocked me, so I haven't been in touch with any of them. And I keep thinking about what has happened, trying to figure out who was actually in the wrong here. For me, I personally still believe that it was my sister's fault and that my parents are spoiling her by letting her feel like she's justified in trying to borrow money from me. My parents are well aware of the fact that I'm saving money for my own business, but even then, they did not think that it was reasonable enough for me to decline to help her. And from what I've noticed, most of my other relatives have also either unfollowed me on social media or have started blocking me. It feels really lonely because I don't have a lot of friends since I'm a bit of an introvert, and even though it wasn't like I used to stay in touch with my family every day, at least I knew that I had the option of speaking to them when I wanted to. Right now, though, I feel really numb, empty, and lonely, and that's more of a reason why I've been wondering about whether I did the right thing by refusing to help my sister out, because even though it would have compromised everything that I stand for, at least I still would have had my family by my side. It wasn't even like my sister and I had a terrible relationship. We used to speak pretty often on the phone and would meet a couple of times every month as well. I was also close enough with my parents, so I really do miss them right now. And apart from her relationship with money, my sister was a nice person and we got along really well. In fact, I would say that the way she used to live beyond her means at all times was the only bone of contention between us, but apart from that, we were always the best of friends. And as for my parents, it wasn't even as though they had always favored my sister over me. She had been the golden child or whatever. We had been treated quite equally while we were growing up, and so that's why I guess I'm so shocked by this turn of events at the moment. Maybe it's because she has a baby right now that things are so different, and I don't know for sure, but I guess everyone had expected me to go easy on them since she had just given birth a couple of months ago, and that's what has gotten everyone even more upset with me. So what do you guys make of this? Am I the asshole for telling my sister that I'm not going to help her out with rent because it's her own fault that she can't afford to cover it? Update 1. Hi, so a lot of people took issue with the kind of tone that I had in my post. I'm sorry if it came off like I was being arrogant, but I honestly didn't mean for it to sound like that. While I was typing it out, I was obviously kind of annoyed with my family, and I think that translated into the kind of tone that I had. Most people have said that I sounded like one of those people who would say, "I told you so." And maybe I think I'm one of those people, but I am so exhausted with all of this drama that I couldn't be bothered to put on a nice front. Anyway, regardless of my tone, people have agreed that I don't need to help my sister out because it's my money, so I don't really owe it to her. It might have been a different situation if she had genuine reasons to spend money, and maybe then I would have helped her out, but not right now. So I guess I'll have to continue missing my family since I don't think they're going to apologize to me or try to at least make things right. I'm pretty sure that they have spread this story among other relatives, and that's why nobody wants to speak to me, but that's fine. I wasn't close to them anyway. It just feels bad knowing that the entire family is standing against me at the moment, even though I haven't exactly done anything wrong. All of them just want a scapegoat, and I guess I'm the one right now. It's fine though. They can blame me for now, but at some point, they're going to have to face the facts, and soon enough, they'll be turning on each other. My parents are finding it easy to stand by my sister right now because currently she's busy blaming me for not helping her out and all her anger is directed towards me. But from what I know, I'm sure that pretty soon she'll start getting upset with our parents as well and will start demanding that they give her the money that I couldn't, because one way or another, she will definitely have to come up with a way to pay rent. And if she doesn't, that's not going to end well for her. Eventually, She realizes that not even our parents are going to give her the money, even though they are standing by her right now. Things are going to get ugly, and I know that for a fact. Then I'm only going to sit back and watch the drama with popcorn. Update 2. So recently, one of my cousins decided to reach out to me and tell me exactly what my parents and my sister had been saying about me, and well, it's not good. I had assumed that they had only been spreading the story about me, and the story itself had been enough to turn everyone against me, but apparently, they twisted and distorted some facts to make me seem like an even worse guy, and I really don't understand why they would do such a thing because I can't imagine that they will stand to gain anything by ruining my reputation. As it is, I don't really have a close relationship with the rest of my family. It's a relief that my cousin decided to contact me and ask me what was going on because he had heard from his mother about me what my parents had been saying behind my back. It was so out of character for me that he couldn't bring himself to believe it and just had to talk to me about it. If he hadn't approached me to discuss this, I probably wouldn't have been able to set the record straight at any point, and people would have just continued to believe my parents and my sister. Anyway, coming to what they had said, they had made it seem like I was the one who had encouraged my sister to start a family when she had come up with that idea and had even promised her that I would help her out any time that she expected me to. For the record, obviously no such thing had happened, and I can't even count how many times I had tried to dissuade her from actively trying to get pregnant. And so, naturally, my sister came to me to ask for help when she realized that she was going to have a hard time covering rent this month. But when that happened, I pulled a complete 180 and decided not to help her out. And that's why she was upset because I had promised her something and now I was going back on my word. Not only did they lie about this, but they also said something worse about me. That apparently I had borrowed money from her a couple of months ago while she was pregnant and had promised that I would return it. Apparently, I had borrowed that money to repay some personal debts, and she suspected either alcoholism or gambling. She claimed that even though she was pregnant and she knew that she would need the money in the future, she hadn't thought twice before giving it away to me, and in spite of that, I was being so ungrateful right now. The claims of alcoholism and gambling aren't that hard not to believe because, like I said, I'm a bit of a loner, and I think anybody in my situation would find it very easy to get addicted. But I only drink at parties, and even then, I tried to restrain myself because I hate getting hungover, and I have never gambled in my entire life. So for her to say something so horrible about me, it's just cruel at this point. These are the rumors that she has spread, but along with that, she has also been telling everyone that I'm just jealous of her lifestyle, and that's why I refuse to help her out. Once again, I think people would find it very easy to believe because I live on my own, I haven't had a steady girlfriend in a couple of years, and I don't really go out that often, and neither do I have a lot of friends. So I have heard from my cousin that most of the people who had unfollowed me or blocked me did it out of loyalty towards my sister since she gets along pretty well with the rest of our family, and all of them have been making fun of me behind my back for years now. At least earlier, I had my sister to stand up for me, but now she's joined in on the mockery. Most of them think that I'm a humongous loser, and I think a lot of them were glad to have an excuse to remove me from their socials. Something like this might have bothered me when I was in high school, but right now I honestly don't care. I think it just speaks volumes about their character and not mine, because at least this is the lifestyle that I have chosen for myself. People might not approve of it, they might not think that I am doing all that I can with my life, and they might even think that I'm a loser, but I really don't care. I never have, and I'm not going to start changing my lifestyle right now to impress a bunch of nobodies. The few friends that I do have mean the world to me, and I know that they would say the same for me. I don't even need to meet them every other day to make sure that we are still friends. It's just a given. And I don't mind not having a partner right now. I've been out on a couple of dates, but right now I just want to be on my own. I know what my goals are, and I'm working towards them, which is more than what they can say for themselves. Most of them still rely on their parents for money, and I guess the reason they hate me so much is because they're so unhappy and insecure about their own lives that they can't help but mock me for being content with mine. I just expected my sister to be different, that's all, but that'll teach me to have any sort of expectations from my family at all. Anyway, after learning these things, I don't feel sorry about what I did at all. I'm really happy that I refused to help her out. She definitely doesn't deserve it, and I hope that my parents continue to stay out of my life. I'm also really thankful to my cousin for telling me about all of this. I'm guessing he is the only normal person in this family of weirdos. Update 3. I really hadn't expected my last update to blow up the way it did, but I'm really happy that so many of you resonated with me. and it's been a hard couple of weeks, but I'm doing okay. It has been almost 15 days since I last spoke to my sister or my parents, and even though I haven't bothered them, something happened last night that I will come to later. Anyway, in the beginning it was really extremely lonely, but then I hung out with my friends a couple of days back, and I feel like I'm going to be fine. I told them all about what happened with my family, and they told me not to worry about it, that I'm better off without them, and I really do agree with it. I have indeed been feeling a lot better without them for the last couple of days. The initial sadness has worn off, and I have also blocked each and every member of my family from all forms of social media. I've also blocked their numbers, so none of them can reach out to me even if they want to. It's not likely that they will want to, but it brought me some sense of closure that I really needed, and I'm really happy that I removed all of them, not just from social media but also from my life, because they just keep sinking to new lows every day. So what happened last night was that I had just come back home from work and was about to go freshen up when I heard somebody ring the doorbell. And when I went out to check, I saw that nobody was there. But I still opened the door and realized that somebody had left a bag of stuff on the porch. When I lifted it, I realized that it was pretty lightweight, and when I opened it, I was actually genuinely shocked to find a bunch of gifts that I had given to my sister during her baby shower. It was mostly just baby clothes, a couple of toys, and a few baby books. She had returned all of them to me, no note or anything. I thought that was completely unnecessary because even though she and I were fighting, I didn't see any reason for her to discard the things that I had bought for my nephew. I was furious at first, but then I just got really sad because this was so petty and low. I couldn't imagine anyone else doing this, but well, that's just how she is, and I'm pretty sure that when she had talked about this to my parents, they must have signed off on it. I found it very disheartening, and I didn't even feel like throwing it away, so I just stuffed it into a corner of my cupboard where I wouldn't have to see it because it belongs to my nephew, and the poor kid hasn't done anything wrong. He's just caught up in a bunch of unnecessary family drama, and it would have felt wrong to throw his things away. Anyway, that's how I dealt with the situation, and I'm really hoping that after this, she doesn't do anything because it's just becoming really hard for me to respect them as human beings anymore. Update 4. Almost a month has passed since my last update, and I take no pleasure in sharing this with you guys, but things went exactly the way I had predicted they would go. Since my sister no longer had me to blame the situation on, she turned on our parents, and I guess they had a fight or something because from what I heard, even they are bad-mouthing each other now. At least my sister can be excused because she's young and stupid, but I don't think my parents have any excuses for screwing up their relationships with both their kids. That's just really pathetic in my opinion. Anyway, from what I've heard from my cousin, I know that my sister has been telling everyone that our parents are just as bad as me because even they have not been helping her out, and my parents have been saying that they have spoiled both of us rotten, which is why neither of us are grateful for anything. Well, it doesn't bother me what they are saying about each other anymore because at least I have managed to set the record straight by telling my cousin the truth, and he has told his mother about it. A couple of people from the family have apologized to me, but honestly, that doesn't really mean much because it doesn't affect my life in any way whatsoever. I just didn't want anyone to get away with lying about me, which is why I had bothered to tell my cousin the truth. At least now I'm done with my family, and they can keep fighting amongst themselves. In a way, I'm really glad that I had that fight with them because it revealed their true character to me, and even though I really don't want to be the jerk who says, "I told you so," I can't help it if they are so predictable. I don't even mean to be cocky right now. It's just how the situation has turned out that's really funny to me. Anyway, I have saved up enough money, and now I think I'm going to switch to working from home so I can focus more on building my business model and speaking to investors so I can start soon. Wish me luck, you guys. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My mom chose my toxic stepsister over me and kicked me out. Now I got engaged, and my fiancé's company dropped her husband. She blames me. I, 26F, have been engaged to my fiancé, whom we'll call Jeff, 26M, for approximately 2 months. I met him 4 years ago on a dating app, and we've been inseparable since. Jeff and I are soulmates. He is the only person in my life who has never disappointed me. I have not had an easy life. My parents divorced when I was 2 years old. My father abandoned us without looking back. He paid child support, but that was it. He never bothered to come and see how I was doing. To be honest, my mother, 48F, was not a terrific mother either. When I was younger, she was more focused on other activities than on raising me. I was basically reared by nannies and babysitters. When I was a little older, my mother was quite young, and her priorities were very different. She didn't care much about becoming a mother and spent most of her time with friends or on dates. She was an outgoing socialite who had no time for me. Even in terms of her career, she was not taking her work seriously. She was a freelance artist who made good money every month, but she didn't have to worry about me since she had child support checks coming in to cover everything. I hate to say it, but if it hadn't been for the child support, I'm very sure she would have kicked me out a long time ago. She was never very devoted to me, and I suspected she was waiting for me to mature so I could leave her alone. Then, when I was around 13, she began seeing my stepfather. My stepfather, Matt, 50M, has a daughter around my age. We'll call my stepsister Jess. When they initially started dating and my mother brought his family home to introduce us, she advised me to be on my best behavior since this was very important to her. Now, Mom had brought home boyfriends dozens of times before, but she had never been concerned about how I behaved. She would generally just tell me that she had guests coming over, and I would use that as a cue to go into my room and stay until they went. But this time, I had the impression she was serious about the person. Otherwise, she would not have been concerned about my actions. To put it another way, if she wasn't serious about Matt, she wouldn't have worried about my presence in the house at all. The first time I met him and his daughter, they were relatively kind to me, and it was a pleasant introduction. I had no idea what was going to happen to me following that initial meeting. Soon after, he began to visit more frequently, and it seemed as if they had almost moved in together. I didn't mind it. It wasn't bothering me in any way, so I had no need to worry about them as long as they allowed me to go on with my life. It remained that way for a long time. They were practically living together, and Jess would occasionally visit as well. Her mother was still a part of her life. Therefore, she spent half of each month at her mother's house. Initially, people were either polite to me or ignored me. I was fine with that because I didn't really care for any of them. I didn't really care about my mother, so it was tough for me to care about anyone related to her. All I wanted was my own peace and quiet, which I enjoyed for a while. But then they decided to make it a permanent relationship and move in together. Now, I wouldn't have cared, but my mother informed me that now that they were moving in together, I would have to start sharing my room with my stepsister. I refused to do that because it was my room. It had been my room my entire life, and it was the one thing that gave me calm in that house. I had my own private area. I was not going to give up my freedom by sharing a room with someone I barely knew. When I told my mother that I was not going to share my room, we had a heated quarrel. She threatened to kick me out of the house if I did not do what she asked. I was 14 years old at the time, and despite my youth, I was aware of the law. I felt compelled to sense my mother was the type of person you couldn't truly trust. It's also plain basic logic, and I knew Mother couldn't send me out until I was an adult, or she'd face legal consequences. So I informed her that I knew she couldn't do it and that she was faking. She was frustrated, but she had to let me have my room and chose to convert the basement into Jess's room. It wasn't a very horrible place to be. It wasn't as nice as my room, but my mother worked hard to make it more appealing and livable. By the time she was finished, it looked as good as any other room in the home, so I had no idea what the big issue was. But for some reason, that's when Jess started disliking me. It could have had something to do with the fact that on the day she moved in with us, my mother gave them a house tour and made it clear to everyone that Jess had to live in the basement since I wasn't ready to share my room. I didn't understand why she would make such an announcement, and I still can't think of a rationale. Perhaps she intended to make me feel bad by stating it in front of Jess, but all it did was make me feel strange and uncomfortable. It made me feel embarrassed for her, but I didn't feel bad about putting my foot down. Or perhaps she simply enjoyed drama and wanted Jess to know that I had refused to share my room with her, which would undoubtedly lead to difficulties between us. Jess did not appear to be the type of girl who would tolerate something like this. My mother was correct. Jessica refused to let it go. After that day, she began treating me as an adversary. She would still spend half of the month with her mother, but the days she would be living with us were excruciatingly difficult for me. She was a threat to society, and she had a personal vendetta against me. She was frequently nasty to me and made horrible statements about me right in front of my face. To give you an example of what she would say, She once told me that the reason my father left my mother was most likely because of me. Then she laughed as if it were hilarious. She would make fun of my appearance because I was slightly fat at the time. She used to make fun of me at school for no apparent reason. Jess had a huge clique of mean females at school, and she would never miss a chance to bully me with her friends. Earlier, she and her pals would simply ignore me, which I loved. She and I were never friends, but that was vastly preferable to being her enemy. The saddest aspect was that I had done nothing to her. She was simply offended that I did not want to share my room with her. It was a ridiculous cause to hate me so much and try to ruin my life. My room was my safe area, and with a mother like mine, I don't think anyone can blame me for wanting my own space. Besides, if any of them had ever made an effort to get to know me, I could have shared my room with her, but she was a stranger to me, and I didn't feel comfortable giving up my independence for her. I never complained to my mother or Matt because they were aware of the situation, and it was meaningless to do so. They didn't care. I might be bullied my entire life, and they would still turn a blind eye since I was not important to them. So I had to put up with it and let her trample all over me. I would fight back periodically, but I quickly realized that it only escalated the conflict. Our parents would intervene, and I would be grounded because they despised me. She would constantly cry a little to get out of trouble, but I couldn't cry on command like her, and I wasn't as manipulative, so I'd be the one who was punished for my poor behavior and advised to start treating Jess like a sister, while she got away with it and I had to face the consequences. It was a miserable place to grow up, and I despised my existence, so when I was finally kicked out around my 18th birthday, I was relieved more than anything else. I had put up with my family's craziness for years before being kicked out, and it only became worse over time. Jess continued to be a nightmare to deal with, and our parents continued to back her without questioning the legitimacy of her actions. In 4 years, she had managed to turn our whole high school against me, and I had just a few friends who would even talk to me. Everyone else despised me because she did, and that was sufficient justification. It had taken a toll on my mental health, and I was battling to keep up in all areas. I had acquired a lot of weight from binge eating, and it had severely changed my appearance for the worst. I was overweight, acne-prone, and had pretty awful hair. I was also trying to maintain my grades, so not only did I look horrible, but I also appeared to be dumb to everyone else. I had nothing going for me and was at an all-time low. Things at home were no better, as I still had to deal with Jess and my parents. My mother had grown increasingly irritable and would continually compare me to Jess, despite the fact that she was the one who had made my life so much worse than it had been previously. Things were terrible before my mother married Matt and they moved in together, but not as horrible as they are now. Yeah, it was terrible that my mother didn't care about me before, but after her marriage to Matt, I went from the frying pan to the fire. She progressed from not caring to intentionally making me feel horrible about myself, and it felt as if I was also living with mean females at home. It was very clear to me that Jess was the daughter my mother had hoped for. Instead, life had dealt her the wrong hand, and she was stuck with me. I know they both wanted nothing more than for me to leave, and to be honest, I did too. My mother and Jess despised me, but Matt didn't care. I have no relatives to speak of other than my mother because my grandparents did not communicate with us. I had never known my father, and I knew nothing about my other grandparents. I actually had nowhere to go, and I felt awkward approaching my friends for assistance, so I had to fight it out and stay with my mother to ensure that I had a roof over my head and food to eat every day until I reached 18. But then a few weeks before my birthday, an incident occurred, and I was expelled out the same day. It was a weekend, yet I remember it like it was yesterday, since it was one of the most terrible and stressful days of my life. We had both recently graduated, and she had begun hanging out with a bigger circle of folks. She had a buddy whose brother was in his senior year of college, and she was dating her brother, so she and her friend would hang out with his pals, who were all older than us. I understood exactly what they were up to, but I didn't think it was worth bringing it up with my parents because with my luck, it would only backfire. So I never told anyone that she'd started drinking, and while I couldn't prove it, I knew she was smoking pot and whatnot. I was never interested in any of it because, first and foremost, I never had friends who were cool enough to have access to drink, cigarettes, or drugs. Second, I was already suffering with my weight and academics. I didn't need to add drink or drugs to the mix. I already had plenty on my plate. But that day, I believe I left my room unlocked before going for a shower. The next thing I knew, I heard a banging on the bathroom door, and my mother was yelling at me, insisting that I come out right once. I had to rush and put on my clothes so I could see what she was talking about. When I got out of the shower, my mother, Matt, and Jess were waiting in my room, all with serious expressions on their faces. My mother took out a bunch of empty beer bottles from beneath my bed, and even more incriminating, there was a giant plastic baggie containing I'm not sure how many grams of weed. My parents were unaware that it did not belong to me or Jess. I believe she had planted it in my room when I was not there and then informed my mother. They began flipping out and yelling at me about what a terrible person I was. She didn't just yell at me about the drink and drugs. She also started venting about how I was a complete disgrace to them. She protested that I ate all the food. She stated I was a waste. She was convinced that I would never do anything worthwhile in the future and would simply continue to live with them and spend their money. I attempted to explain multiple times that none of it belonged to me and that I had no idea how it ended up in my room, but she didn't believe me. She lost it when I suggested that Jess might have planted it in my room to get me in trouble. She began yelling at me about how I was always jealous of her and that I would never be as good as her at anything, which was why I was attempting to shift the blame. I was crying uncontrollably by that point, but she didn't seem to care and proceeded to rant at me. After some while, she stopped shouting at me and told me I needed to leave. I had no idea what she was talking about, so I asked her where I was heading. She told me she didn't care where I went. She just wanted me out of the house because she was tired of dealing with me. When I refused to go, she threatened to call the cops on me. She added that because I was almost 18, they would treat the drug allegations very seriously. She informed me she did not want an addict living with her and consuming all of her money and resources. I had to watch out for myself now since she was tired of pretending to be a happy family with someone who deserved nothing. I was pleading with her not to force me out because while I wanted to leave, I knew I had nowhere to go and didn't have enough money on my own. But my mother didn't care. She informed me that if I didn't leave within that day, she would phone the police and report me herself. I was surprised that she could be so cruel, and even more so that neither Matt nor Jess complained about it. They were literally going about their day as if nothing was happening. After a lot of crying and begging, I finally started packing my belongings. I would gladly choose to live on the streets over being arrested for drug possession. I finished packing by the evening, and as I left the house, no one said goodbye and I never looked back. I went to the park and sat on a seat for a few hours, but it got pretty cold, so I decided to go over to a friend's apartment and spend the night there, hoping they would let me. I went to my best friend Amy's house and asked if I could stay with her for a few days. She already knew how my parents were, so I didn't need to explain much to her. When I told her about what had happened that day, she was horrified. She said her parents could help me if I allowed them. I'd always urged her not to tell anyone about how my parents treated me, including her parents, because I wasn't sure if anyone would believe me. I guess I felt awkward revealing these sensitive information about my life with others. But that day she compelled me to inform her parents, who were as appalled as Amy was. They called my mother and attempted to speak with her, but it didn't help, and she was quite unpleasant to them, so they recognized that talking to her would not make things any better. Then they did something for which I am grateful beyond words. They promised me I could stay with them for as long as I needed to and that they would assist me. They were wealthy, so money was not an issue, and Amy adored me, so she was willing to share a room with me. I spent the following few years living with them and attending community college, which was the only place I could get accepted due to my poor grades. I began working and accumulating money to buy my own place, but Amy's parents made sure I never felt pressured to leave their home and made me as comfortable as they could. Then, roughly 3 years ago, I finally acquired enough money to move out. I was proud of myself, and I was also grateful to Amy and her parents. I honestly could not have done it without them. Even on the day I moved out, they were the ones who helped me settle into my new home and informed me that I was welcome to return whenever I wanted to visit or even live with them. That was the turning point in my life. By then, I'd shed a lot of weight, and my health had improved significantly. I felt and looked better. I was also generating enough money to support myself and had put in enough effort to improve myself, so I decided to start dating as well because I wanted to marry someday and needed to start searching. I met a couple of guys before Jeff, but it usually fizzled out before it could get serious. After meeting Jeff, I fully understood why. It was because Jeff and I were intended to be together, whereas the other guys I met before him were only there to have fun. When we first started dating, I had no idea he was wealthy and the heir to his father's firm. I just liked him because he was humorous and cute, and he appeared to like me as well. After a few months of dating, he informed me about his family, and I understood they owned a restaurant chain, which he would inherit in a few years after his father retired. Many people may believe that learning how wealthy he was changed things for me, but I simply regarded him as the same person I had known before. That information made no difference to me. I still loved him as much as I did before. We moved in together after approximately a year of dating, and he had introduced me to his family a few months earlier. Everyone in his family liked me and we got along great. Everything was absolutely perfect, so when he recently asked if I wanted to marry him, I knew the answer right away. We've been engaged for 2 months now, and things are going great. But then, around 2 weeks ago, I got an email from Jess. We haven't spoken in almost 8 years, and I haven't heard from my family since I was kicked out. I had no idea why she would contact me now, especially to make amends. I believe enough time has passed, and neither of us cares enough to try to mend the problem anymore. So when I received that email and understood she was reaching out to me to apologize for all that had happened in the past and admit that she had been a complete nightmare, I was perplexed. She admitted to placing stuff in my room to get me tossed out since she disliked me for no reason. I had no understanding why she was revealing all of that so many years later, and I sensed something was wrong with the situation. The timing was further suspect because I had recently gotten engaged, and I knew she must have known about it. I had mentioned it on social media, and we attended the same high school, so someone must have told her about it. Everything felt odd, so I started to investigate. As a result, I discovered that the man Jess was married to also owned the company that supplied plastic containers and other items for takeaway orders to Jeff's restaurants. It was easy for me. All I had to do was create a phony profile and stalk her. From there, I went to her husband's profile where he disclosed everything about his work in his bio, so it was a simple process. I already knew a lot about Jeff's business because we had planned to run it together after his father retired, so I was already learning the ropes. When I realized this was the individual he was dealing with, I immediately alerted Jeff. Now, over the past few years, I've done my best not to think about my previous life since I just wanted to go on, so I didn't follow anyone from my family online, and I told my friends not to tell me anything about them. I had no idea Jess was already married and had been for a few years, but when I discovered that her husband was actually interacting with us, Jeff and I decided to cancel our arrangement. It was already costing us a lot of money, and I don't think I'd ever do business with that woman again. Jeff also informed me that the quality of the things delivered by her husband had reduced significantly since the beginning. They were considering dropping him as a supplier anyhow and were in talks with another guy who offered lower prices and better products. So last week, a few days after I received Jess's email, Jeff decided to meet with her husband and cancel their contract. But for some reason, Jess believes I did this on purpose to get her back, and she has been accusing me of it in her emails and social media posts. We haven't spoken in about a decade, but she still believes I am carrying a grudge against her, which I may be, but that is not the true reason her husband lost our contract. She posted a few days ago that many of her clients had already dropped them, and this was the final straw. But she maintains that I did it out of spite and that this was really unprofessional of us. She tagged our Facebook page in her post, and things have gotten pretty ugly. I feel awful for her because, according to her message, she and her husband have been losing business left and right. Okay, I'll admit that some of this was personal, but much of it was business as well. I doubt Jeff and his father would have dropped her husband as a supplier based only on my word. Nevertheless, I feel awful for her. I'm not sure if I should have made my fiancé quit working with my estranged stepsister's husband. Update 1. Okay, so Jeff has spoken with his father's lawyers, and he believes we did the correct thing. So we're going after them legally and asking that they remove that message. We are also filing defamation charges against them because the guy charged us a bomb and delivered things that fell short of our expectations. If we could obtain a better offer somewhere else, we'd obviously go there. It's just a coincidence that Jess is married to the guy who runs that firm. Instead of improving their company's operations, she chose to trash us on social media. It's stupid that I allowed myself to feel horrible for her after everything she'd put me through, but you guys truly opened my eyes, so I appreciate that. Many of you have been quite supportive, which I appreciate. Thank you so much for your comments. Update 2. So, Jeff and his father filed a slander claim against Jess and her husband a few days ago. We'll meet with a court-appointed mediator in a week, maybe, but in the meantime, my mother has taken it upon herself to protect her poor little stepdaughter yet again. It is so silly. I feel like I am back in high school. But happily, I'm not back in high school, so I can simply disregard what they say. Unlike then, I don't need to be in my mother's good books to get a roof over my head. So she may cry all she wants about it, but nothing will change. She has been attempting to contact me for the past few days ever since Jess was served, but I have simply blocked her and gone on with my life. I don't need that type of negativity around me. I am engaged. I'm going to marry the guy of my dreams, and I don't need her or her insane stepdaughter back in my life. Update 3. Hey, so let me quickly fill you in. First, we won the defamation lawsuit. It wasn't even that difficult because my father-in-law's lawyers are absolute sharks, and they killed her and her husband. So maybe they'll focus more on their business now and meet their clients' expectations. They had to pay for what they stated, and we were able to strike an agreement. So that's over, and we can finally devote all of our attention to preparing our wedding. It's quite thrilling, and I can't wait to get married to Jeff. As previously stated, he is my soulmate, and I have waited a long time to find someone like him. Now that I have him, I will never let go. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My 5-year husband abruptly and mysteriously filed for divorce, but I heard a startling exchange with his friend that told me everything. 5 years ago, I, a 30-year-old woman, married my 32-year-old husband after almost 2 years of dating. I was completely smitten with him. I, therefore, said yes without hesitation when he proposed to me. I was a surgeon at the time, and my husband was an actor who was having trouble finding a job. I paid for practically everything in the house, but I didn't mind at all. I was more than willing to pay all the bills since I wanted him to pursue his goal. Despite frequently being cast as an extra in most sequences and earning only half of what I did, he never gave up. He recently got a small part in a feature-length movie. I was ecstatic for him. For him, it was a huge event, even though he just had 10 to 15 minutes of screen time. Everything appeared to be going well, and in a few weeks they were set to begin filming for his part. But 5 days ago, my husband unexpectedly served me with divorce papers, and my entire world came apart. I was caught completely off guard. I didn't think he would ask me to get a divorce. I felt the same way about him as he had about me. Everything happened so quickly. He said he no longer felt the same way about me. When I asked him why, he claimed that now that he was at last receiving serious offers, he wanted to focus more of his time and efforts on his work. He said that this was only the beginning of his career and that he desired a new beginning, one that excluded me. He claimed that the burden of his former life, which reportedly included me, could not hold him down. I was heartbroken. It was unbelievable to me that he was saying this after all the sacrifices I had made and the times I had put his aspirations ahead of my own. That day, I sobbed for hours and pleaded with him to reconsider our marriage, but he refused to listen. He said that he no longer felt anything for me and that there was nothing more to be done. He thought it would be better if we split up now. I was devastated when he packed up his things and departed. I spent the following 4 days completely lost. I was so depressed that I didn't even go to work. I kept hoping that this nightmare would end. After that, my hubby called me yesterday. He had a meeting the following day, so he asked if I could leave some of his formal attire at his friend's house, where he was staying. In the hopes of meeting him face to face and perhaps persuading him to return, I gladly consented. I had no choice but to go to his friend's apartment since I was desperate. When I got there, I heard my husband and his friend conversing inside, and I saw that the door was slightly open. As I was ready to knock, his friend asked him why he had married me in the first place if he had no intention of staying. I was interested in that. I made the decision to remain silent and listen in the hopes of learning more. I had entered at the perfect, if unpleasant, time, and it felt like they had already been discussing me. My husband laughed before responding to his friend's inquiry. And he continued by saying that he married me simply to utilize me to advance in his job. He acknowledged that his heart didn't love me. He had cheated on me numerous times over the years with unidentified women he met at parties or on set. I nearly gasped, but I was able to hold myself back. I wanted to hear more from my beloved hubby. He went on to say that a friend of his had introduced us, telling him that I was the daughter of a well-known dentist. My dad is among the state's top dentists, so that much was accurate. My husband was also aware that my dad frequently worked with a well-known actor. Some of his acquaintances in the business had told him about this. Everything started to make sense to me as he talked. He described how he had reached out to me in a desperate attempt to salvage his acting career. It was only a plus that I was rich and, in his opinion, easily influenced. He claimed to love me for 5 years while he waited for a chance to meet my dad's well-known customer. About 5 months ago, at my dad's 50th wedding anniversary celebration, that chance presented itself. Many of my dad's acquaintances, including his most well-liked customer, who was also a close friend, were invited. My husband charmed him, spoke with him at the party, and even exchanged phone numbers with him. I didn't know at the time. Due to his hectic schedule, my dad's customer was only at the party for approximately 30 minutes, but within that brief period, my husband was able to get his number. Even though I hate him today, I must admit that when my spouse feels like it, he can be very charming. I wasn't shocked that he was able to pull it off, but I was surprised to learn that my husband had spent 5 years of our life together causing me unspeakable heartache, all for his own self-serving ends. And to top it all off, I helped him get his current position. On the recommendation of my dad's client, the film's director signed him. I am the one who has been betrayed and is now being discarded through divorce, even though I am the one who made this huge career breakthrough. At that moment, I wanted to go in and give him a face punch, but I controlled myself. I drove home after making my way back to my car on foot. I had plenty of time to analyze my anger and devise a strategy to exact revenge on this self-centered monster because this incident occurred yesterday afternoon. I tried to relax by meditating after I got home. I was enraged and worried that if I didn't manage my emotions, I might physically harm him. I made every effort to divert my attention and devise a scheme to ruin him. Asking my dad for the actor's number, calling him, and insisting that my husband be removed from the movie was one of my first ideas, but since it was a professional issue, I wasn't sure if it would work or if my viewpoint would be taken seriously. I've known my dad's client since my undergraduate days. He knew me much better than he knew my husband, even though we weren't really close. After speaking with my parents, I finally thought it was worth a shot and gave him a call in the evening. I thought there was still a chance to make things better, so I hadn't notified anyone about the divorce yet, not even my family. I was so anxious because this was the first time I was going to admit it. His assistant finally got me through after multiple calls. Following some awkward small conversation, I spoke without pausing and said everything I needed to say. I revealed that my husband had cheated on me and secured a movie role through my dad's and my connections. I requested that he use his power to get my husband fired, stating that this would be the correct thing to do if there was any justice in the world. I'm sure he was as uneasy hearing it as I was speaking it since I said it all at once. There was a pause before he stated he would investigate. After saying thank you, he hung up. The whole experience made me feel ashamed, but it was over. At this point, my only option was to wait for a response from him or my spouse. About 10 o'clock at night, 2 hours later, my spouse began calling me in a panic. I understood then that he must have already been dismissed. I was shocked at how fast it had transpired. I texted the man who made it happen to say thank you. He hadn't had much trouble taking care of it because there hadn't been a legal contract, just a verbal understanding. He responded to my text with good wishes for the future, which I found to be quite considerate and gave me hope again. Without a care in the world, I turned off my phone, disregarded all of my husband's calls and texts, and went to bed. I'm not lying when I say that I had the best sleep of my life. As I was getting ready to go for work this morning, I heard my husband yelling for me from outside my door and pleading with me to open it. I told him to go because I had to leave for work and didn't intend to let him in. He was unwilling to give up, though, and insisted that I have one final conversation with him before removing him from my life. I eventually grew tired of his shenanigans and let him in, telling him that I would not waste my time again. He sobbed as he dropped to his knees and admitted that he had erred. He pleaded for another opportunity, saying that I was the only woman he had ever loved. However, I no longer felt sorry for him because I knew how talented an actor he was. After letting him cry for a few minutes, I inquired about the success of his acting role in the movie. I deliberately used a mocking tone because, let's face it, that's precisely what I was doing. He appeared shocked for a second before realizing what had happened. He went crazy when he realized that I was the reason he had lost the chance of a lifetime. He began yelling in my face, saying that I had ruined his life and that I would be held accountable. I also didn't hold back. I shouted back at him, telling him that he deserved this, if not worse, because he had destroyed 5 years of my life. After what seemed like 5 minutes of us yelling at one another, he finally broke down. He was aware that no amount of yelling and yelling would restore what he had lost. Neither the role nor the happy life he had been having with me. He was solely responsible for his own actions. Even though he was crying, he made sure to tell me that he would take everything from the divorce and leave me on the streets, which made me feel almost terrible for him. Those were fairly audacious remarks, and any pity I might have had for him was instantly gone. I told him to leave my place as respectfully as possible. He complied, leaving while still sobbing and mumbling obscenities. That day, I made the decision to skip work once more. I wasn't feeling well, and the events had been terrible and weighty. Update 1. At last, I disclosed the divorce to my family and acquaintances. They were just as caught off guard as I had been when my spouse initially expressed his desires to me. But they were all appalled when I told them what I had heard at his friend's place. They even said that what he had done to me was far worse than my vengeance. When my dad learned that my husband had taken advantage of both him and me to further his objectives, he became quite angry. He wanted to go to my husband's house and use his fists to make him understand, but I was able to calm him down. I'm happy that most people concur that my actions were appropriate. My husband's treatment of me was so harsh it permanently damaged my trust in marriage and men. He deserved to be punished for his efforts, in my opinion. I had spent many years and a significant amount of money on our marriage, just as he had spent years on his work. I don't think it matters that I destroyed his career on my own if he could destroy our marriage on his own. He keeps contacting me online, pleading with me to retract my remarks and assist him in regaining the part as if he had been cheated out of a chance. Despite my efforts to block his accounts, he continues to create new ones out of desperation. I'm now thinking of completely stepping away from social networking. After everything he's done, I don't see why he feels entitled to get in touch with me. I hope he eventually understands that he's done and that there's no turning back. It appears that his threats to destroy me throughout the divorce were mostly verbal. We both understand that he cannot harm me in any way. Update 2. A few days ago, I erased my social media account and blocked my husband, but it appears that I also need to update my phone number. I've had between 70 and 80 spam calls from various numbers since last night. I'm going wild over it. My phone is constantly buzzing every few minutes, and it's always from a different number. I know it's him, but I'm not sure how he's doing it. I even gave him a call to tell him to stop and to be aware that his actions would have an impact on the settlement. I was obviously bluffing. No deal is possible. I was attempting to use it as leverage to get him to quit pestering me, even though I owe him nothing. He was adamant about denying any role in the calls, though his voice made it clear to me that he was lying, which only made me feel more irritated. As I was about to cry at the end of the conversation, he hinted that if he were to miraculously regain his role, the calls may cease. The final straw was that I yelled as many colorful profanities as I could at him before shutting off my phone. I have been using my laptop to surf the internet and have yet to switch it back on. I only intend to switch my phone back on after I have a new number. Since he will no longer be able to reach me, hopefully, it will stop him from making me insane. Everyone is aware that I will not challenge the divorce. In a few days, we are expected to appear in court. I don't understand why he is acting inappropriately when he is well aware that we will soon be in court together. He is also aware that if I so desired, I could make his situation far worse. I'm lucky he doesn't. I want to let this whole thing go without a struggle, since I've already done what I have to do. I can't go on if I hold on to this anger and allow him to bother me. I'm eager to close this phase of my life. I don't care what happens to him. I'm no longer concerned about his future success or failure. Update 3. My husband and I are scheduled to appear in court the day after tomorrow. Naturally, he couldn't allow that to occur without acting in a crazy or psychotic manner. I was certain that he could no longer contact me because I had canceled my social media accounts and changed my phone number. I believed that he would be forced to give up since I had finally defeated him, but I didn't realize how insane he really is. My hubby unexpectedly showed up and sat down next to me in the passenger seat last night as I was getting ready to drive home. Before I could even react, he closed the doors. I quickly retrieved my pepper spray from my purse after realizing what was going on. He grabbed the purse and threw it into the back car, but I was too late. I was so scared that I was willing to do anything he asked me to get out of this predicament safely. It became even more frightening when he spoke to me in a calm manner. When he stated that he didn't want much, I called my dad's actor client, retracted my statement, and made sure he was given his role back. I pretended to agree, telling him that in order to make the call, I required my phone out of my handbag. Now, my hubby is definitely stupid, but I'm not. When he gave me the handbag, I immediately reached for my pepper spray and sprayed him with half of it at once. His condition was much worse than mine, which was watering and stinging horribly. He was having trouble breathing, spluttering, and coughing. I pulled him out of the car, unlocked the doors, and drove off, leaving him coughing on the ground. Before I had to stop, I had only made it out of the parking lot and a few yards from my place of employment. I realized I couldn't drive home in my current state of vision impairment, so I got out of my car. Fortunately, a taxi arrived, and the driver appeared to be a friendly individual. He volunteered to drive me to the closest police station after seeing something was strange. Without hesitation, I agreed. The 2 hours that followed were a haze. After what had transpired in the parking lot, I was still in shock. Although I had always known my spouse was insane, this was much more than I had anticipated. It was difficult to accept that after 5 years of a happy marriage, this man was suddenly causing me to suffer through this nightmare. Fortunately, he was taken into custody. Because of his condition, he had been unable to leave the parking lot. His face was still red and a little puffy when they took him to the station. The fact that he was in pain made me happy. I left the station after pressing charges, but I went to my parents' house instead of home. I haven't left their house since I got there because I no longer felt safe being by myself. The support from my parents has been tremendous. One little comfort during this journey has been that they have been treating me like their little girl once more. This time, I'm not stopping my dad from fulfilling his commitment to make sure my husband receives a suitable punishment. It is imperative that certain guys realize that they cannot bully women and get away with it. Update 4. Hello to everybody. A few weeks have passed since my last update, and I'm pleased to report some positive developments. For what he did to me, my husband received a 3-month prison sentence and a heavy fine. I believe this result is fair, even though I wish the punishment had been lengthier given the circumstances. We were able to expedite the divorce process, and it will be completed much sooner than typical. I'm so relieved that he doesn't have any compensation rights. In order to make sure he can't find me again, I've also sold the house and my car. In addition to being superior, the new hospital where I work is also nearer to my parents' house. For me, commuting is far more convenient. Even though my spouse can no longer reach me, at least not for the foreseeable future, they won't let me return to living alone, so for the time being, I'm still living with my parents. To my surprise, I don't mind remaining with them as I'm still getting over the shock of everything that's transpired. Their support has been consoling. In order to better digest my feelings, I've also begun going to therapy. I'm aware that recovery will take time and that things won't return to normal right away. I try my hardest to move on, but sometimes I can't help but think back on the years we had together. Some of the moments felt so real that it's difficult to realize it was all falsehoods. Every time I find myself thinking about him, I make myself recall the events that followed, particularly the parking lot incident. That brings me back to the here and now. I'm taking things one day at a time. Even though I know these wounds won't heal right away, I'm hoping that I'll be all right shortly, and to be honest, I can't wait for that day. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My sister-in-law hated me for years and had a tragic miscarriage. Then we welcomed her back, but she told my child she was his real mom. My sister-in-law despised me for years, but after she suffered a tragic miscarriage, we welcomed her back into our lives. Unfortunately, she began telling my child that she was his real mother. David and I have been happily married for 8 years, and we have a 4-year-old son named Tom. Tom is a lively, imaginative kid, very attached to me and a bit of a mama's boy. I cherish this bond, knowing that as he grows older, his interests will change, and he might not want to spend as much time with me. David and I make a great team, managing our home, raising Tom, and pursuing our careers seamlessly. This harmony stems from David's respectful and communicative nature, which has fostered a strong partnership between us. However, despite our smooth sailing, there's an ongoing issue with David's sister, Kathy. From the very beginning, Kathy has been difficult to get along with, maintaining a cold attitude towards me. David had warned me early on that while his parents would likely accept me, Kathy would be tough due to her protective nature. He was right. When we first met, Kathy bombarded me with questions about my background, all the while acting unimpressed and condescending. She would also bring up David's exes in our conversations, comparing them to me as if it were normal. During one dinner, she even suggested David join her and her friends on a girls' trip, claiming he needed to clear his head before committing to me. This remark annoyed me, and David noticed, asking her to back off politely. This brings me to a point of contention with my husband. While he does defend me, his affection for Kathy sometimes prevents him from setting firm boundaries. This emboldens her to keep pushing, believing she has his best interests at heart simply because she's the older sister. From that first dinner date, I knew Kathy and I didn't like each other. It stung a bit, but I wasn't about to bend over backward to win her over if she had already made up her mind. Despite this, I always remained polite during our encounters, though she never made it easy. One incident that stands out is David's grandparents' anniversary party. The entire family was invited, and I attended as David's +1, since we'd been dating for a year by then. Throughout the party, I enjoyed chatting with his friendly and easygoing family. The one person who completely ignored me was Kathy. I noticed and tried to stay out of her way. When everyone gathered for a group photo, Kathy loudly pointed me out, demanding I step out of the picture. She suggested David might break up with me and didn't want one of her brother's bimbos in the family photo. I was mortified as everyone around us looked uncomfortable. David tried to argue, but Kathy kept interrupting, saying I was just a random stranger and shouldn't have been at the party. Humiliated, I excused myself to find my car keys, determined not to spend another minute near her. David and his parents followed me, apologizing profusely. His mother tried to persuade me to return, but the moment was ruined. I heard his grandparents scolding Kathy, making me feel even guiltier for spoiling the day. I left immediately, considering breaking up with David, thinking I couldn't handle his sister's behavior. However, David showed up at my place later with flowers and pastries, apologizing sincerely. He told me everyone had reprimanded Kathy for her rudeness, and he had threatened to cut ties with her, which made her cry. David expressed his frustration with his sister's antics and reassured me he didn't want anything to do with her anymore. We had a long talk, and I felt comforted by his support. In the following days, David kept his promise. We stopped seeing Kathy altogether, and he ignored her calls. When she showed up unannounced at his house, he changed the locks and asked his parents to talk to her about respecting his privacy. With his parents' support, Kathy had no choice but to accept that her brother wanted nothing to do with her. We hoped this would make her reconsider her behavior, but it had the opposite effect. Kathy started calling and texting me, leaving threatening messages and blaming me for everything. The breaking point came when Kathy showed up at my workplace one afternoon, demanding to see me. Thankfully, my manager intervened and kicked her out, but the incident left me deeply shaken. I told David that I had no choice but to break up with him to escape his sister's harassment and consider taking legal action against her. David was devastated, pleading with me not to end our relationship and promising he would handle the situation. David then convinced his parents to arrange a meeting with Kathy at their home. During this confrontation, his parents, fully aware of what Kathy had been doing, made it clear they wanted nothing to do with her unless she changed her behavior. They all warned Kathy that her actions were borderline crazy, and if she continued, they would support my decision to take legal action. Miraculously, Kathy finally broke down and admitted she needed help. She confessed to feeling out of control and revealed she had lost her job and had been unemployed for months, worsening her mental state. David's parents took immediate action, admitting her to a psychiatric hospital where she could be monitored. David reiterated that he did not wish to maintain contact with her, which Kathy reluctantly accepted. She sent me an apology text that felt somewhat insincere, but I hoped for her sake that she would heal. When David and I finally married, we chose not to invite Kathy, even though she had been discharged and seemed to be doing better. I wanted nothing to do with her, and everyone respected my decision. Kathy did send flowers to congratulate us, which I appreciated. After we returned from our honeymoon, Kathy announced her engagement. It surprised everyone, as no one knew she had been dating. We were cautiously happy for her until we learned she was marrying a man she met in the psychiatric hospital. This man, James, was schizophrenic and an alcoholic with violent tendencies, according to his doctors. Understandably, David and Kathy's parents were concerned. Kathy planned her wedding for the following month and only invited David, excluding me. While I wasn't surprised and felt relieved not to have to make an excuse, David was offended by the exclusion and chose not to attend. Those who did attend the wedding later told us it was a disaster. Kathy and James were heavily intoxicated during the ceremony and couldn't even properly repeat the vows after the priest. During the reception, James continued drinking until he was blackout drunk, then started ripping open his shirt and pants while everyone watched in horror. Being schizophrenic, James didn't like the attention and suddenly attacked a server, accusing the innocent bystander of looking suspicious and hiding something. His family managed to calm him down and paid off the server to avoid pressing charges. This incident deeply scarred everyone, raising serious concerns about Kathy's safety. If James could attack a stranger, what was to stop him from attacking Kathy? David and his parents tried to talk to Kathy about her husband's disturbing behavior, but she was convinced she could change him. Despite their warnings, Kathy believed James would never harm her. Unfortunately, she was wrong. Over the years, James isolated her, cutting off contact with family and preventing her from seeking help. Though there were instances of police being called due to their violent arguments, Kathy refused to leave him, convinced he was the one for her. For years ago, I became pregnant with Tom, and we were all overjoyed. I wanted Kathy to be part of my baby shower, so we sent her an invitation. When we received no reply, David drove to her place to check on her. He discovered that James had cut her off from any communication with us and thrown away the invitation. David confronted James, but Kathy defended her husband, refusing to see his wrongdoing. Frustrated, David left, and we lost contact with her. Even after Tom was born, we did not reach out, and her parents eventually stopped trying to convince her, hoping she would be okay. The past few years with Tom have been peaceful and full of love. David and I have found a wonderful rhythm in our marriage, and Tom keeps us busy with his curiosity. David's parents visit every weekend to babysit while we have our date night, allowing us some time off and giving the grandparents quality time with Tom. Everything was going well until 8 months ago when Kathy showed up at our doorstep, muddy and disheveled, with no shoes on. We immediately let her in, and I fetched her a blanket as she was shivering. We hadn't seen her in years and were at a loss for words. David comforted her, asking if she was okay. Kathy looked numb, staring into space. Eventually, she revealed that she had just miscarried. We listened in shock as she recounted how she had gotten pregnant a month ago, initially believing James would be happy. However, he grew increasingly paranoid, fearing the baby would take her away from him. They fought frequently, and he even threatened to poison her food to cause a miscarriage. That day, she woke up feeling uneasy, and at the doctor's, she found out she had lost the baby. Numb and sick, she couldn't drive home, so she walked, eventually ending up at our house. She must have walked at least 20 blocks barefoot, but she couldn't remember why she had no shoes on. I felt so sorry for her and immediately gave her a hug. At first she hesitated, but then she hugged me back. We sat there for 5 whole minutes as Kathy cried into my arms. We knew then that this was her way of asking for help. David seemed ready to confront James directly, but I convinced him to call the police and notify their parents, who were better equipped to handle the situation. His parents were incredibly grateful to have their daughter back and assured her of their unwavering support. When the police took her statement, they were as shocked as we were by the abuse Kathy had endured. James was arrested despite his protests and threats, continually denying his involvement in her miscarriage. However, Kathy's toxicology report revealed she had been poisoned, leading to the loss of her baby. In the end, due to James's mental issues and his incompetence to stand trial, the judge sentenced him to an indefinite stay in a psychiatric facility for treatment. Although this was frustrating, we were grateful to have Kathy back safe and sound. By then, all my previous animosity towards her had vanished. As a woman, I felt immense sympathy for her and wanted to move past our history to help her heal. Kathy also seemed calmer and no longer hostile towards me. When we felt she was ready, we introduced Tom to her, hoping it would aid her recovery. She grew very close to Tom in a short time, which none of us minded initially. This should have been my first red flag. Over the weeks, she found ways to spend more and more time with my son, often showing up unexpectedly at our house. Staying with her and David's parents made it easy for her to drive over unannounced. She insisted on giving Tom baths and reading his bedtime stories, gestures that initially seemed kind but gradually felt intrusive. Kathy's increasing presence started to feel odd. She visited almost daily, staying longer than necessary, bringing toys and gifts for Tom, and always seeking involvement in his daily routines. She would comment on his clothes or hairstyle, suggesting how Tom would look better, which bothered me. While I appreciated her efforts to bond with Tom, it began to feel like she was undermining me again, this time through my son. My maternal instincts kicked in and I talked to David. He assured me that I might be overthinking and that his sister was just trying to cope with her pain. He reminded me of her recent loss, making me feel guilty. I decided to let her be, thinking if taking care of Tom made her happy, what was the harm? As days went on, I tried my best to accommodate her constant presence. She started looking after Tom daily while we were at work and even took him to the park in the evenings. Sometimes, when I came home, I noticed that my son no longer greeted me with the same enthusiasm. He wouldn't run up to me and instead looked at me with curiosity. After Kathy left, I would try to talk to Tom about his day and whether he had any issues with Kathy, but he was less engaged and seemed sad. As his mother, this change in his behavior worried me deeply. However, when I discussed it with my husband, he would gently dismiss my concerns, assuring me that Tom was just growing up and I was overthinking. The nagging feeling persisted, so I confided in a coworker who suggested installing nanny cams from Amazon in Tom's room and our living room to monitor him. I thought this was a brilliant idea and promptly bought 2 cameras. I didn't inform David about this, not wanting him to dismiss my concerns again. Yesterday, after Tom went to bed, I decided to check the nanny cams while David watched TV downstairs. I retreated to my study to review the footage, which included audio. Initially, it was just Kathy playing and caring for Tom, appearing very good with children. However, I was shocked when she pulled a book from her purse, one I hadn't seen before. We usually have age-appropriate books for Tom, but this one was different. She read the book to Tom before his nap. As I listened, I realized the story was about adoption and how a mother sometimes gives her child to another mother to care for. Kathy added her own commentary, telling Tom that this was why she had left him in my care years ago, because she wasn't ready then. My eyes widened in horror as she continued, claiming that she would always be his real mother and no one could love him more than she did. She kissed his forehead and left him to nap. My hands shook with anger as I realized what she had been telling my son, causing his strange behavior. This poor child must be feeling incredibly confused. I was ready to confront David and demand that Kathy never be allowed in our home again, but I held back. Instead, I decided to take a day off to spend with Tom and understand what Kathy had been telling him. When I informed Kathy that she didn't need to babysit, she reacted anxiously, insisting that she loved spending time with Tom. I firmly told her to back off, wanting a day alone with my child. David asked if I was okay, and I reassured him that everything was fine, but that I needed a break. Later, I took Tom to his favorite park, and we spent the day playing, eating pizza, and laughing. I wanted him to feel safe before broaching the conversation about what his aunt had been telling him. He got a bit quiet. I reassured Tom that he wasn't in trouble and that he could talk to me about anything. That's when he opened up. He told me how Kathy had been trying to convince him for weeks that she was his real mother, though he didn't truly believe it. She also told him that I would eventually leave him because only real mothers love their children. Her insistence made him scared to ask me about it, fearing I might actually kick him out. He said he loved me and didn't want to go live with Kathy. Hearing those words broke my heart. I stared at his tear-streaked face, seeing a small and vulnerable child instead of the joyful and playful boy I knew. I knelt down, gently took his hands, and assured him that everything would be okay. We would get through this together. I hugged him tightly, feeling the weight of his fears and pain. I felt like a failure for not protecting my son from this psycho. I promised him that he had nothing to worry about and that David and I would take care of it. However, my son then told me that David already knew about all this. I asked what he meant, and he said, "I asked Daddy, and he knows about this, but he told me not to tell you anything." My blood ran cold as I realized that my husband, despite knowing what his sister was up to, had chosen to protect her instead of our son. He knew everything. I couldn't let my son be around these people anymore. I didn't want him to be confused and frightened about his own mother. I was his mother, and it was my job to protect him from this. Quickly drove home and packed our bags. I told my parents we were coming over and that if David asked, we would say I missed them and wanted to spend time with them. Luckily, my parents are very supportive and immediately said yes. As I write this, I've already explained everything to my parents, and they are as shocked as I am about what Kathy has been telling my son. David did call when he came home to an empty house, but I tried to sound normal, telling him I needed a break from our place and work. He sounded curious, but I assured him I'd stay with my parents for just a few days. We rarely fight, so I guess he didn't think much about it, even though my behavior must have seemed strange to him. I am so conflicted right now. I have no idea what to do. How should I confront this situation? Am I the a-hole for distancing my son and me from my husband's crazy sister? Update 1. Wow. I woke up to over 600 comments on my post. I can't believe so many people on Reddit have come across my story. I used fake names throughout, so hopefully none of David's family members will realize it's about him. To those criticizing me for not talking to my husband first, I assure you I would have if my son hadn't already tried to talk to David. My mother's instinct told me that since my husband knew for weeks about our son's changed behavior and kept gaslighting me, a confrontation with him wouldn't have been productive. I needed to get my son out of the situation immediately, and he is now much safer with my parents. No one can feed him lies here, and that's all that matters. Kathy has been trying to contact me, sending multiple messages insisting she needs to see my son and how much she misses him. I plan to put an end to this at the upcoming family get-together at David's parents' place this weekend. This gathering has been planned for weeks because David's grandparents are visiting, and I thought it would be a nice time to spend together. However, given recent events, I will use this opportunity to speak my truth and ensure Kathy stays away from my son for good. Update 2. I'm back with an update. I finally confronted David as planned during the family get-together. I was so nervous beforehand, but I decided to bring the nanny cam recording as proof. To cut to the chase, I called out Kathy in front of everyone during lunch. She looked shaken and tried to laugh it off as if it wasn't a big deal. Then I showed the nanny cam footage and explained that I had recorded what she told my son. I watched the color drain from her face as I sent the video to the family group chat for everyone to hear. Her parents were horrified as they watched her try to convince my son that she was his real mommy. Next, I confronted David and told him how he failed to protect our son. My husband looked really guilty but tried to justify his actions, saying he didn't think much of it and thought it would help his sister cope with her grief. He felt torn between supporting his sister's recovery and telling me about it, ultimately choosing to keep quiet. I told him that because of his actions, I no longer trusted him and couldn't let our son be around him or his family. For the first time in a long while, I saw my husband break down in tears, but I stood firm. I made it clear that I couldn't let my son grow up in a family where his father refused to stand up for him to protect his mentally ill sister. David and Kathy's parents and grandparents apologized to me and assured me they would make sure Kathy stayed away from our son. Kathy looked utterly humiliated but didn't have the decency to apologize. David kept trying to justify his actions, but I ignored him. I left shortly after the confrontation, feeling that my work was done and wanting nothing more to do with any of them. Update 3. I see some of you are confused about my decision, so I wanted to clarify. Yes, I plan on divorcing my husband. I know many of you suggested giving David a second chance since this wasn't entirely his fault, and I agree that he is a good man. However, being a good man doesn't automatically make him a good father. Just because we never had issues doesn't mean he was a good father to Tom. He should have addressed this from the beginning when our son came to him with doubts instead of spending weeks trying to cover it up and gaslighting both Tom and I. I can't trust him anymore. I welcomed Kathy back into my life with open arms after what she went through because, as a woman, I felt sorry for her. But in the end, she proved why I never liked her in the first place. I understand that Kathy's abuse was extremely traumatic, but that doesn't mean our son should have to suffer for it. She is an adult with mental issues, and although we thought she had improved, she clearly hadn't. However, what really surprised me was my husband. The fact that he prioritized her mental well-being over our son's shows why he should never be around Tom. He was always such a supportive husband, and I thought I could trust him, but his actions regarding Kathy have shown otherwise. I promise that from now on, I will protect my son no matter what. I am confident I can get full custody of Tom if I expose his family history during the custody battle. Now on to the next story. Story 9. My husband can't accept that I don't like mustard. When I protested, he threatened divorce and drove dangerously, putting us both at risk. We've been married 2 years, dating 5. We are both 34. I'm a woman, he's a man if it matters. I'm not a picky eater. In fact, I'm quite adventurous. Every time I've traveled, I've always made it a point to try dishes with unusual, uncommon ingredients to say I've tried them. There are very few foods I won't eat. One of them is mustard, the condiment. I don't like it, I just don't. The taste is very strong and overpowering, and it's an unpleasant taste. I've tried yellow, stone ground, honey, artisan, brown, spicy, you name it. I have tried them all and I just don't like them. My husband, for some reason, never understood this. He loves mustard, especially honey mustard. He puts it on all his sandwiches, dips his fries in it, and every time he tries to force me to try it, he'll insist, "I'll like it this time. I'm a grown-ass woman. I know what I don't like, and I don't like mustard." So I'll say no, and it'll devolve into a mini-argument where he'll call me picky. Well, last night we were on the road home from a weekend trip we took together, and he stopped at a gas station to get us a quick bite. He got a hot dog slathered in mustard. I got one but decided to keep it plain. I don't really love hot dogs to begin with, but I will eat them. While we waited in line, he asked what I got on mine. I told him nothing. He actually got furious and grabbed it from me. He marched over to the condiment station and began putting mustard on my hot dog, telling me to grow up and stop being picky. I just walked out and sat in the car. I didn't even want the damn hot dog anymore. My appetite was gone. He came back and began screaming at me for embarrassing him even further. The word divorce was said for the first time ever. I secretly recorded his screaming because I was genuinely afraid I would die. He was driving erratically, swerving and speeding. I'm in a hotel tonight. He ignored me all day at work, and then the calls started around when he realized I wasn't coming home. Non-stop voicemails and texts. He sent me a screenshot of a Google search for local divorce lawyers. I haven't eaten all day, and I've been sobbing in this damn hotel room. I don't want to get divorced, and I wish I had just eaten the mustard. Someone, anyone, please give me an explanation. Am I in danger? Why would he react this way to a preference of mine? I'm completely broken right now. Relevant comment. There's got to be more going on here than mustard. Things just don't escalate from mini arguments to full-on screaming rages and divorce lawyers. But it's pretty simple, you said no. He does not respect you. He doesn't respect your right to say no. He does not respect your right to make your own choices about food. Does this lack of respect carry on into things other than your no to mustard? Yes. It will usually take him at least 3 times to acknowledge when I say no. Update 1. Some answers. I guess to questions I saw regarding when I said no to sex. He respected me if I said no to having sex, but he would ask over and over. I used to give in at first until I started dreading doing it. He tried buying all this stuff to make me like it, to make it easier or whatever. I used to I don't like giving them to him, but he'll still ask over and over. I started responding with, I said no. Are you going to force me to do it? And he'd get squeamish and offended that I'd implied he would rape or assault me. If I have a support system? No. I've always been a very small circle kind of person, and I lost touch with casual college friends. My friends are his. It makes me feel like a loser, but I don't really have friends of my own. My parents are dead. My dad died when I was a teen, and my mom passed recently of heart failure. I have no siblings. I'm financially capable of living on my own, and I could pay for a divorce. I just really didn't want things to be this way. The mustard thing was always just an annoyance to me. I didn't consider it a deal breaker, but obviously it is for him. We have no kids and no equity. Our finances are separate, save for one joint account we equally contribute to for bills. We were looking at buying a house. I'm safe. I'm at work, and I'm staying in the hotel until further notice. He has continued to text. One message said that he loves me and doesn't want to lose me, but I forced his hand by refusing to communicate or come home. I haven't answered. I don't know what to say. I forced myself to eat my favorite takeout late last night, but it tasted like cardboard. I stayed up late compiling a list of every time he has shown worrying behavior. I guess the mustard is the tip of the iceberg. Relevant comment. OP. An addendum. I suppose I do very much love him, and he has been my best friend for years now. I really do. I guess did plan to spend my life with him. I'm not afraid of being alone, but I don't want to be lonely. I wish my mom was here. Update 2. Sincerely thank you all. Sincerely, thank you all for your kind words, as well as sending me links to resources. He has reverted back and has told me that he never wants to see me again, so I suppose that gives me time to read that book that someone on Reddit suggested to me. I forget the name. I will admit, while I was at work and thinking of the lonely room waiting for me after 5, I considered just going home. But I knew what awaited me. I'm too drained to muster up the kind of apology he would be expecting in order for things to go back to normal. I honestly fear that our normal is detrimental to me. I also don't want to apologize. I don't think I did anything wrong, and you all helped validate that. I always felt like I was the one disturbing the peace. He'd get so upset over things that were little to no effort for me to just do or go along with because I loved him. And somewhere along the way, I think I lost myself. I never liked mustard. I never liked golf, camping, or red wine. But he loves all of these and wants me to love them too. He said he was introducing me to his hobbies so we would have shared interests as a couple, but I have realized that out of all the things I used to like, he has either refused to try or ignored my interests. Our shared interests are just his. God, how do I feel like my own person again? My world broke not 2 days ago, and now I'm drunk at a hotel bar switching between Reddit and researching divorce lawyers. I still don't want a divorce. It's so permanent. I never pictured myself as a divorcee. I used to think that every choice I made deliberately. It used to be a point of pride for me. But he's making this choice for me and it hurts. Update 3. First of all, I took this week off at the encouragement of my employer. I plan to spend it finding a therapist that specializes in domestic abuse and sexual assault, which I've come to realize I'm a victim of. I feel completely numb. I'm also looking into a divorce lawyer. Secondly, he found the hotel where I was staying. I guess he followed me from work. He was waiting in the lobby. God. My heart skipped a beat, and I realized that I did not miss him at all. I was afraid of making a scene. I need to unlearn that. So I sat with him in the lounge area and talked. I'll summarize it. I pointed out the security camera and said if he tried to hurt me, there'd be footage, and I would press charges without a second thought. He was completely shocked and said he'd never hurt me. I reminded him how I feared for my life in the car. He ignored me. He asked why I wasn't coming home. I was completely blank-faced when I told him, "Because you're divorcing me." He said he didn't mean it and was just upset. I said, "When normal people are upset, they express it in a healthy way. You threatened the end of our marriage. I'm taking you seriously." He got pissed and asked if I was saying he wasn't normal. Honestly, I just wanted the conversation to be done, so I told him if that's really all he heard, then there was no point in talking anymore. I told him I was looking for a lawyer, and he should probably do the same if he hasn't found one. He lashed out and said, "All this over one mistake?" And I just stared at him. As I made to stand up, he grabbed my wrist hard, and I pointed at the camera again. This just made him angrier. He never could handle slights to his ego. One mistake. It wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern of abuse over years. It was threatening me, intimidating me. I told him if he tried to contact me again beyond sending me his lawyer details, I'd be calling the police. He let me go. I want to say I was a badass and celebrated in my room. I collapsed onto my bed and began sobbing. I was just so sick and angry and sad. He truly doesn't care about me. I've been crying on and off while calling local therapists. God, why is it so hard to find one? The amount of therapists that advertise but turn out to not be accepting new patients is unacceptable. I've looked into victims of DV/DA support groups as well. In the span of less than a month, my life has completely changed, and he isn't remorseful at all. He just thinks it's all my fault. Relevant comment. OP, I will probably move. I saw my Reddit post get reposted on Twitter. I'm terrified he'll see it and come for me. A lot of people commenting on it were saying he would try to kill me, and I believe them. Update 4. I have a divorce lawyer. That's all I am comfortable with revealing here for the time being. I will also mention that I have moved locations. I am safe and secure. My work has allowed me to go fully remote. My STBX does not have my location, nor are there any trackers on my phone. I am in contact with people and organizations who are helping me. Earlier this week, the calls and texts really ramped up. I was advised to leave him unblocked and simply muted so his messages would come through. I read a few since I was curious. He wanted me at Thanksgiving dinner with his family. He begged me to stop being this way, and what was he supposed to tell his family? Well, Thursday came and went. I had bought a couple of ready meals the night before, so that was my feast. I do want to take a break here to talk about my mom. Since it was only 3 of us every holiday, except the rare times friends would come over, my mom wouldn't make a turkey. She would buy a rotisserie chicken and dress it up with stuffing, etc. She'd make dishes we loved rather than traditional Thanksgiving dishes. My favorite side dish of all time was French fries. My dad loved grilled asparagus with cheese. So we would have a rotisserie chicken with French fries, asparagus, and some garlic toast, my mom's favorite. The first time I had real, traditional Thanksgiving food at a friend's house, I apparently told my mom loudly I didn't like it and asked where the fries were. Haha. So this year, instead of my STBX husband's family's Thanksgiving food, I bought asparagus, fries, garlic toast, and a couple of slices of rotisserie chicken. It wasn't half as good as my mother's meal, but when I say I cried eating it, it felt like they were with me that night. I guess my absence at the dinner forced my STBX to tell his family that I was separated from him. So Friday morning, I got a phone call from an unfamiliar number. I answered it thinking maybe it was my lawyer's home phone or another person I was in contact with. It was my mother-in-law. She begged me not to hang up on her, so I stayed on the line. She went on about how I was her daughter. She loved me. Her son loved me. And how could I leave him over something so minor? He only told his mom about the mustard. And even then, it was a watered-down version that made me look like a neurotic control freak who needed everything my way. According to my MIL, he just made a side cup of it for me and asked me to just try it in the car, and I started screaming I'd divorce him. She then started probing about which lawyer I was seeing and what I had told them. She also reminded me that Lying in court was a crime. My lawyer had warned me to not reveal anything we had discussed to his family. It took all my willpower not to say anything. Instead, I hung up and muted her number 2. She hasn't texted or tried to call again. Trust me, I would have loved to send the recording of her son screaming, saying he ought to smack me upside the head, calling me a stubborn bitch, that he would divorce me, and that he would run the car off the road if I didn't start acting right. I wanted to scream into the phone that her precious son started this mess, and I was simply doing what he wanted. I have come to realize you don't treat someone you love like the way he has acted. Normal people don't want to have sex with someone who has already said no. Normal people don't keep pushing and obsessing over food preferences. There is something seriously wrong with that man. He texted me last night, Friday, calling me a cunt for making his mother cry. He also said he would come find me, and it would take more than a locked door to keep him from getting me and taking me home. I forwarded those to the right people. I know this isn't a happy update, but things are moving along quite nicely. Update 5. I moved. I will not say where, but I have found a new home. My job lets me stay permanently remote. I can't go into details about my divorce or other current legal proceedings, but I can say I was granted a protective order due to something that happened back in December. Due to the nature of what happened, I was hospitalized for a time. That was what I guess made me realize I wanted to get the hell out. I traded my car, had my phone checked for tracking apps and devices, and changed my number. He cannot contact me or have anyone contact me on his behalf. I am now several hours and state lines away from him and his wretched family. I moved with only 2 suitcases and a duffel of my stuff. I cannot wait to furnish and decorate my new home the way I always wanted it. I'm in therapy and I have a survivor support group I see weekly. I will be okay. I feel like I can finally breathe. Update 6. Hello, it's been a while. I'd sort of forgotten about this account until I saw screenshots of my posts uploaded to Instagram. Some key points. I am still going to therapy, individual counseling, and bi-weekly group meetups for victims of DV. I am absolutely not dating. I saw some comments that said they hoped I found a fairy tale man. That's the last thing I want or need. I strive for independence and self-love before I consider finding a new partner. It'll probably be years before I'm ready, and that's okay. I have discovered a love of cooking and trying new cuisines. I didn't realize how boring my ex's taste was until I escaped him. Slathering mustard on a $2 hot dog does not mean you have superior taste buds. Sorry, I had to get a jab in somehow. Nothing new or dramatic has happened, and that is the way I like it. What matters is I'm alive and I'm happy. I didn't realize how little I'd made myself until I was given the space to be. That's all I'm willing to give for my update for now. Peace and love. Relevant comment. OP's picky eating. There's nothing wrong with being a picky eater, but I'm actually not. I'm finding I love a huge variety of flavors and ingredients. My STBX was actually a very, very picky eater. I'm coming to realize maybe some projection on his part. Update 7. It seems that I just can't escape my story. Haha. I was getting ready for the day when my TikTok feed showed a podcast reading and reacting to my story. I'm here to reassure all of you that I'm okay, alive, safe, free, and with that stress and anxiety mostly cleared up, I feel like I can finally put to words my emotions. I was very small and skittish during the abuse and for some time after leaving. I'm not sure how else to put it, but I felt like I had to be small. I was constantly regulating and accommodating. It was horrible in retrospect, but no one prepared me for the emotional turmoil that ensues once you're safe. In a way, I felt rage like nothing else. I would spend hours screaming and crying into my pillow, hating him, wondering how dare he treat me like that. As therapy and my support group has worked to rebuild my self-esteem, I've become more and more outraged on my own behalf. I read, "Why does he do that?" And while it helps provide context to why he abused me, it still doesn't make me feel less angry. I guess I'm angry for myself as a human being. He treated others with respect but thought I deserved all that he did to me, and that makes me angry. Of course, there was relief, sadness, all of that. I think I slept for days straight after I left. I was in a daze. My therapist reassured me that all of this is normal. I don't want this update to be negative, not in the slightest. So, Some good news as well. My therapist recommended yoga and Pilates, and it has been great for me. The release of a deep stretch, being in shape, feeling strong. It all has helped me massively. I feel healthy, and yes, I cry when I do hip opening stretches, haha. Also, I made friends, real friends. I joined a local women's club, part of my neighborhood, and we do various activities bi-monthly. This next week we'll be doing a little embroidery project. Everyone brings snacks, and we just enjoy each other's company. I'm alive, I'm angry, but that is part of healing, but I am working on being happy also. And I will never, ever eat mustard again or be pushed into doing anything I said no to the first time. Relevant comment. OP clarifies he did not do jail time. He went to mandated counseling, and that was considered legally acceptable equivalent to jail in our state. TW sexual assault. He raped me. That's the catalyst that resulted in me moving and our divorce moving along properly. He was trying to impregnate me, he told me that. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Used my late uncle's inheritance money to open my dream restaurant with my girlfriend of 6 years. But she cheated on me with a bartender she hired behind my back. My girlfriend and I had been together for 6 years. I loved her, and I wanted to be with her for the rest of my life, but apparently she had different feelings about that. Neither my girlfriend nor I went to college after high school, so we spent a lot of time trying to work to make ends meet. When we weren't working, we were spending time in town at local bars and restaurants. Our dream was to open a restaurant and bar for ourselves. We talked about it all the time, and we were hoping to get a business plan in order so we could try to get started. After a couple of years of planning and dreaming, we finally had a bit of a breakthrough. My uncle passed away and left me a large house. He didn't have any children or many other relatives, but he did know that I was hoping to open my own business. He hoped I could sell the house and invest the money in my bar. Some of my family members advised me against going into business with my girlfriend because we weren't married, but I didn't listen to them. I trusted her, and I thought that she and I were going to be together for the rest of our lives. I wanted to marry her, but I wanted to make sure I could give her the perfect wedding that she'd always dreamed of. That meant having the business up and running. The only thing that I did to protect myself was make sure she wasn't on as a business partner. She was listed as an employee, so God forbid anything happened, I had an out. The thing is, I didn't tell her that. She was under the impression that we were equal partners in the business, and I knew telling her otherwise would hurt her feelings. We started working on everything, and within a year we were preparing to open for the first night. My girlfriend was in charge of hiring the staff, and I told her to give me the rundown when she was done. After she came to me with the resumes and information from the people that she hired, I looked over everything. We hired talented cooks, experienced servers and hosts, and for the most part, the bartenders were skilled. However, there was one that didn't have any bartending experience. His name was Eric, and his only work experience was at an office supply store. I questioned her about it, wondering why she would hire him over another applicant who had experience. If she liked him and wanted to give him a job, why wouldn't she hire him as a host or server? Training somebody in either of those roles would be much easier than bartending. She didn't really have a good reason for hiring Eric. She told me that she had a gut feeling about him after they were talking about drinks. She told me that I just needed to trust her because she already hired him and they couldn't undo it. I had too much other stuff to worry about to focus on why she hired him. A couple of weeks before opening, all of the staff came in to train and sign their contracts. I met Eric for the first time. When I introduced myself to him, he was a good-looking guy. With his lack of experience, part of me assumed that that was why my girlfriend hired him. I thought it was pretty annoying. When we got back to our house later that night, I mentioned it, and she got angry with me for even suggesting that. We dropped it so there wasn't an argument, and we both went to bed. Over the next couple of weeks, I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I had so much to do, and there wasn't enough time to do it. I wanted our opening to be completely flawless, and it felt like my girlfriend wasn't putting in the effort that I was. Instead of helping me with all of the last-minute things that had come up, she was focusing on training Eric at the bar. At the heart of our business, we were a bar. We needed bartenders who knew what they were doing and weren't relying on a week and a half of training and a cocktail recipe book. I had to go visit a supplier one afternoon, and when I got back, My girlfriend was behind the bar with Eric, and they were laughing and standing very close to each other. It almost looked like Eric was groping her. When I walked in, I asked what was so funny, and when I approached, I could tell that they were a little bit drunk. I had a realization then that my girlfriend didn't have as much stake in the business as I did, so she didn't care as much. I had a conversation with her later that night, and I told her that I needed her to step up with work. She tried to tell me that she was working hard training Eric, and then I brought up how uncomfortable I was with their relationship. It looked like it was crossing some lines, and I told her that I didn't like it. I already felt like she hired Eric because he was good-looking, and seeing them so close together bothered me. She told me that I was controlling when I said that. I was kind of flabbergasted that she would accuse me of that when any sane person seeing the way they acted together would feel the same. If the shoe was on the other foot and I was acting like that with one of the cute servers she hired, she wouldn't let me hear the end of it. I didn't want to focus on arguing with her so close to the opening because it would only distract me. Opening night came, and for the most part it was a huge success. We advertised the business and a bunch of people came in, and it seemed like they enjoyed themselves. The only issue that we had was Eric being horrible at his job. Over the next several weeks, the business was doing very well, and I thought that if it kept up the way that it was, we would be seeing profits in no time. With everyone busy at work, my girlfriend and Eric seemed to be spending less time with each other. I was glad to see that. I was in my office one Friday afternoon, and one of the cooks knocked on the door and closed it behind him. I assumed that he was about to quit. Instead, he told me about a rumor that had been going around about my girlfriend and Eric sleeping with each other. I could tell he was nervous about bringing that information to me because his job might have been on the line, but he felt like it was the right thing to do, so he did, which I appreciated. I figured that the rumor might have just been people looking at their relationship and thinking the same things I did, but something told me that maybe there was something more to it. I hadn't seen them together often since the restaurant opened, but that didn't mean they weren't hiding something. I didn't confront my girlfriend about it right away. Instead, I pretended like I didn't know anything about the rumor and I watched her. Now that I wasn't busy with the opening of the restaurant, I had time to pay attention to things like that. Over the week that I started watching her, I noticed that she was absent quite a bit. There would be periods of time when I would be home and she wouldn't be there. She would show up at the bar about an hour after I expected her. On top of that, she and Eric didn't talk to each other at work. However, I did see them glancing over at each other often. All of that together was enough to make me think that something was going on. We had a no-phone policy on the floor, and I knew that my girlfriend usually left her phone in her bag while she was working at the bar, so I went into her locker one evening while she was supervising the front of the house. It didn't take me long to find the evidence that I needed to prove that she was having an affair with Eric. I found videos of the two of them together and countless text messages. It seemed like their affair started while she was training him at the bar. From what I could gather, they had sex in the bar. Because she was my girlfriend but also technically my employee, I was in a sticky situation. I wanted to break up with her and I wanted to fire her. Eric was as good as done at the business too. But I couldn't behave in any way that would risk me getting in trouble, not with the business so new. From what I saw on the phone, it looked like they were fooling around on the property from time to time. I figured the only thing I could do was catch them in the act and I could fire them both. We had security cameras at the bar, so I started monitoring them regularly. The first instance I saw of them together, I recorded it on the cameras. They both went into the walk-in freezer, and my girlfriend performed oral sex on Eric. That was sufficient evidence for me to fire them. I called them into my office the next day and I showed them the video. They were completely silent while they watched it. When it was done, I told them both that they were fired. Eric nodded his head and apologized for sleeping with my girlfriend and left the office. My girlfriend lingered behind and told me that I wasn't able to fire her because of her position in the business. I pointed out the truth. I had been advised against working with her as a business partner by my family, and I took that advice. She was an employee of mine, and I was firing her. She had no monetary investment in the business, and she was paid bi-weekly just like every other employee. I also pointed out that if she paid any attention to the business at any point while I was building it from the ground up, she might have noticed that. She told me she was going to have a lawyer evaluate everything, but I didn't care. I just wanted her out of my business. After they were both fired, I thanked the cook who told me about their relationship and informed everybody else about the change in management. They asked me about what happened, and I didn't hold back the truth. I told them about finding the footage of my girlfriend and Eric in the walk-in. My girlfriend never ended up getting a lawyer. She probably couldn't afford to get one if she wanted to. After I fired her, she had to practically beg for her old job back, and now she's working paycheck to paycheck again. Eric wasn't really interested in her aside from her being a quick hookup every now and then. Eric had the audacity to put my name on his resume to give him a reference for another job. They called me and I told them the truth about everything, advising them not to hire him. I always thought he was kind of an idiot, but that was just too much. I'm focusing my attention on the business now. It's been doing very well, and there is the demand in my town to open up other places, so I'm trying to look toward the future. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Best friend, 22M, wants me, 20M, to step aside so he can date my unofficial girlfriend, 18F. A little over 3 years ago, I had just gotten out of a relationship with a girl who was really abusive. I broke up with her shortly before I graduated high school and wanted to take some time to focus on myself. Of course, a few weeks after the breakup, I met the most gorgeous girl I've ever met, and we really hit it off. I'll refer to her as Lila. She had also gotten out of an abusive relationship, so neither of us was looking for anything serious at the time. My driver's license was suspended, too much speeding, bad time in my life, learned my lesson, and my friend, I'll call him K, offered to drive me to see her. For a few months, we would mostly just hang out together because we all got along really well, and she and I would mostly just cuddle up if we were all watching a movie. Sometimes we would sneak off for a few minutes to make out a little, but not long because we didn't want to be rude to K. Lila and K developed their own friendship during this time, but it was obviously platonic on both ends, like an older brother/younger sister dynamic. K also had a girlfriend of 4 years then, but they were hanging by a thread. After 6 months, I got my license back, and I'd see Lila/take her out without K. At that point, Lila and I started sleeping together. We both really liked each other, but I panicked and sort of ghosted her for a few weeks. Lila and Kay continued talking, and he said he wasn't going to stop being friends with her because I was being an idiot. Fair enough. I realized I was being stupid, and Lila agreed to see me again. We immediately picked right back up where we left off. Around this time, Kay and his girlfriend broke up, so I moved in with him. I would see Lila a few times a week, and she would come to our place on the weekends and we would all hang out. That continued for several more months until she ghosted me for about 2 weeks. She told Kay she was afraid I would bail again, and she didn't want to go through the pain again. We worked it out, but embarrassingly, this cycle has since been repeated once or twice. Not in over a year though. Over the last year especially, I've noticed Kay has acted differently around Lila. He'll flirt with her in front of me. She's very friendly with him but does not flirt back and pulls away when he touches her. I told him I didn't like it, but he said, "It doesn't matter if he flirts with her. She loves me." She says she doesn't feel that way about Kay at all, and everything indicates that's the truth. Kay has also started drinking more lately, and the other night Lila was not here. He started whining about life not being fair. I took the bait and asked what was wrong, and he started rambling about how Lila was too good for me, and I didn't deserve her. I agree, but it still pissed me off. He then told me he was in love with her and had been for a while, and if I cared for either of them at all, I'd step aside so he could pursue her. I didn't want to argue with him while he was drunk, so I went to bed. I confronted him in the morning, and he doubled down. He said that I couldn't commit. I couldn't give her what she wanted/needed. She wasn't my girlfriend, and she was fair game to try to date. Am I wrong for thinking this is messed up? Lila and I do have an unconventional relationship, I'll admit. We don't refer to each other as boyfriend/girlfriend, but we don't sleep with other people. We tell each other we love each other. She usually stays at my place, and we have a good relationship with each other's families. I think we're pretty happy together. I know she doesn't want to be with him, so I'm not worried about that. But since Kay said those things, I can't help but question if I'm being unfair to Lila by holding her back with me. More info. When we started sleeping together, we did have a conversation and agreed we didn't want to sleep with or date other people, but we also didn't want to put a label on our relationship. We do discuss it occasionally and have always been on the same page, but we have gotten a lot more serious in the last year. The more I type it out, the dumber it seems not to make things more official, though Kay is obviously free to try his luck, but she has said she's not interested. If anything, he'll just mess up his friendship with her. I honestly never saw it as dragging her along. We both did bail in the past, but we've also each been seeing therapists separately for over a year now to work out our commitment issues, and we haven't repeated that cycle since, so I'm not going to bail again. I am completely in love with her, and she's honestly the only person I can see myself ever being with. She feels the same way, but how do you really ask out a girl you've already been exclusively dating for years? This morning I did talk to him again and told him what she had said to me with her permission, which was essentially that his advances have been making her uncomfortable, and if he wants to maintain any friendship with us, then he's got to roll things back to how they used to be. He said he wouldn't believe it until he heard her say it herself without me around. I'm conflicted about that because I don't want to come across as controlling, but I also worry about his reaction when she rejects him. She said she was going to try calling him before agreeing to see him. My guess: he'll claim I'm with her, he'd be right, so he won't accept it. He's trying to manipulate her. He knows it's heartbreaking for her to disappoint anyone, and I think he's trying to play off that. I feel bad for him because he's obviously going through some shit, but Kay has seen my relationship with Lila from the beginning. Everyone who knows us knows the deal. Date 1. I wanted to thank everyone who took the time to respond to my post and update anyone who might be interested in the outcome. I've been staying with Lila for about a week now since the initial confrontation with Kay, and thanks to people here, I was sure I wanted to ask her if she wanted to make things more official. She ended up making things even easier for me. As luck would have it, Lila asked me if it might make things easier if I just told Kay that she was my girlfriend. I jumped on that opportunity and asked if I could tell everyone she was my girlfriend, and she said yes. She and I are going to look at a few apartments this week since I obviously need a new living situation, and we want to move in together. Kay and I had a few brief discussions after he told me he wanted to be with Lila. I had told her everything Kay had said to me, and she was not the least bit interested in him, which I had assumed. I also told him that she is officially my girlfriend now, which should satisfy his concerns about my not committing to her. However, he refused to believe any of it without confirmation from her in person without me around. She initially agreed to meet with him on Sunday, with the plan that they would meet at her house since she lives with her mom and stepdad, but he rejected that, saying he wanted to meet at the apartment without me there. She told him she wasn't comfortable with that. If he wanted to meet up without her parents or me there, they at least had to be somewhere public. I understood him not wanting me in the room or getting his heart broken in the middle of a Starbucks or something, but him rejecting her parents' house when he had always been friendly with him was a big red flag for us. I don't even think I'm going back to the apartment to get the rest of my stuff. He got pissed that his threatening behavior made her feel threatened and went on a tirade, calling her every name in the book. She told him she wasn't going to see him again at all and blocked his number. He has reached out to me a few times, ranging from sad to aggressive, and I'm a text or two away from blocking him as well. Hopefully, he'll just move on and it won't come to that. I hope he's able to get his life together, but I can't help him at this point. If he tries to contact her again, then she's going to try to get a restraining order. I've also told our mutual friends what is happening and that he can't know where our new apartment will be under any circumstances. Edit to clarify, we both wish him well, but neither of us wants to continue a friendship with him under any circumstances. Since posting this, I've also blocked him. I agree with posters that there is no point in keeping any lines of communication open anymore. I have also reached out to some friends to help get the rest of my stuff out, but I was already able to get everything important when I first left. He can make a shrine out of my old shirts if he really wants. Again, thank you to the posters who helped me navigate this situation. Update 2. Okay, so my stuff is out, thanks to two of my friends who are also friends of Kay. Friend A tried ahead of time to convince Kay to leave so we could get everything out without him, but it wasn't happening. Kay said he wanted to make sure I didn't mess with his stuff, which is ironic since he tried messing with my relationship. Friend A then offered to act as a buffer so friend B and I could get my stuff out. When we first got to the apartment, Kay was obviously drunk but calm and seemed almost apologetic. I had already decided I wasn't going to engage with him at all because I didn't see the point anymore. He did not like being ignored, apparently, and started going off gradually, saying worse and worse shit. He started saying about Lila, but I was able to ignore him and let it roll off my back until he told me I might need to F her up and get her in line. He knows her ex before me was abusive. I'm very thankful my friends were able to get me out of there quickly because I've never been so angry like that in my life. It's crazy. He's been texting other mutual friends to find out where we signed our lease. They had to block him too. I do not want any further contact with him, and I've told him that. I do hope he gets his shit together, but I'm done with him either way. Now on to the next story. Story 12. Made my entitled stepdaughter pay for destroying my daughter's computer after she got jealous of her room makeover. But now my husband and his ex are furious with me. I 30F have a 14-year-old daughter, Leia. I married my husband, Mark, 46M, 6 years ago. He has 2 children from a previous marriage, Koi, 16M, and Coral, 14F. Me and Mark have the kids full-time, but his kids live with their mom for a few weeks during the summer. They moved into my lake house, which has 5 bedrooms. 2 of the bedrooms upstairs have bathrooms. My daughter had one of those rooms, but as the girls began high school, Coral began complaining about not having a bathroom and said it's unfair. Mark and Koi told her to stop complaining. Leia said it was fine and asked us if she could turn the basement into her room. I didn't like that idea, but she begged, so I agreed. Turns out my daughter wanted a room makeover, so this worked out. We give the kids allowance and allowed them to get a work permit. Koi worked at an arcade and told the girls he could get them jobs. Coral refused to work, but Leia agreed. After 5 months of saving her allowance, she was able to buy everything she needed to decorate. Coral never bothered to go down there because she believed it was full of spiders, but Koi was down there every day helping her. After a week, she completely transformed the basement. She invited everyone down and it was stunning. I didn't even know that computer towers could be clear. She looked so proud. Coral then screamed that it wasn't fair and that she wanted the basement now. Everyone began yelling at her, but she began crying, and before we know it, she ran over to the computer and threw the tower on the ground. The glass shattered and one of the monitors fell to the floor, also breaking. My daughter cried. I explained to Mark that Coral has to pay for this. He said her emotions are just high and that we'll get situated when everything calms down. I ran to Coral and yelled, saying that she's on punishment. Mark didn't agree, but I didn't care. Coral was unnecessarily crying and ran to her mother's car. Koi was trying to help my daughter, and Mark tried to hand her $300. But Koi explained that Coral caused about $1,000 worth of damages. He said luckily the expensive pieces in the case were saved, but the case itself was about $450 and the monitor was $200. Mark explained that he doesn't have that kind of money, so I said she can't come back until my daughter's stuff is repaired with a sincere apology. Koi agreed, and Mark was upset, saying he couldn't do that to his daughter. I told him to leave if that's the case. Mark left for a few hours and handed my daughter a check for $1,000. I explained that Coral can't come back if there is no punishment. My husband's ex-wife is saying that I'm banning her from our home because she didn't deserve that bigger space and that we were treating Coral unfairly, but I said she did that. There was nothing unfair about the situation. The ex just hung up. Now my husband's ex-in-laws are bombarding him with phone calls saying he's a horrible dad. His sister even said he's being a bad parent and their best friend, so it's really getting to him. This happened last night, and he hasn't gotten up yet. Should I apologize? Update 1. I found out the complete story, and there is a lot of drama. It's over a boy. So both my daughters are cheerleaders, and it's a Valentine's Day dance coming up. All of Coral's friends are cheerleaders, and they all date football players except her. So for the past month, her friends have been trying to hook her up with Brad, but it turns out he is interested in Leia. After all the games, Brad talked with Leia, so Coral came up with a rumor that Leia plays Roblox. It's not really a rumor, but Brad found out. So after school, a few days before the incident, Coral tells Brad how childish Leia is for still playing Roblox, and Brad says he doesn't think it's childish. Turns out him and his friends play and then invited Leia to join them. Then yesterday after school in the hallway, Brad had his friends record this big proposal to the dance that included flowers and chocolate, and Leia accepted. Apparently, Coral was crying at cheerleading practice, and Leia went up to ask what's wrong, and if she needs anything. Coral and her friends started cursing Leia out, so Leia just backed off. Then this morning, Coral posted about how Leia is the favorite child and that she was kicked out of her decorated bedroom in order for Leia to have it. Her mom, Dree, had also posted something similar. Coy didn't want this to ruin Leia's reputation, so he posted everything about their lies. He also posted a picture of the shattered case and explained how everything Coral said was a lie and how Leia was nice enough to give up her bedroom. Dree also called us some horrible names. Then Coy responded that the reason the custody is no longer 50-50 is because Dree's husband hates kids. Apparently, Coral didn't know this, but Dree sent my husband a text saying he knows how her husband feels about the kids being here, so he needs to make up with her and let her come home. Mark then screenshot this and sent it to Coral. She came home and went straight to her room. She skipped practice. Leia is on her way, so when she gets home, we'll have a family meeting. Update 2. So we had a long talk. Coral came down and apologized to Leia, and she was jealous about Brad. She also apologized to me for lying to her aunt. She believed that Leia got everything she asked for, so I had her explain, and the only thing she said was Brad. As I was about to explain, Mark stepped in and told her that wasn't everything. Mark then explained everything Coral got, which included a room makeover which Leia had to pay for on her own, a brand new laptop after Leia had to pay for her entire computer setup. He then asked, "Is this really about a guy that she doesn't have anything in common with?" Coral then told us how popular he was and that because Leia is a nerd, they don't mesh other than cheerleading. Leia explained now that football was over, Brad was also in those clubs and so are his friends who the other cheerleaders date. Coral then began crying again because after the post, her friends explained that their boyfriends don't want to be involved with a liar and advised them to stop hanging with her. So they didn't sit with her at lunch today. Mark told her that was her own doing. She broke down and said, "I know." Mark then held her in his arms and apologized about sending her the screenshot and explained that I wasn't the bad guy. She then explained that Dree told her that I forced Mark to get full custody so that we all could be one big happy family. So that along with the Brad situation made her lash out. She then ran to hug me saying how sorry she was and looked at Leia and apologized once again. I brought up family therapy and everyone agreed. Coral took the post down already and apologized to Leia publicly. I know things are looking up, but without friends in this situation with her mom, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Update 3. So things did not get better. We went to one therapy session as a family and it went great, and the girls started hanging out again. Coral got her friends back, and everything seemed normal. However, when the girls went to the dance, it wasn't good. Brad and Leia were dancing and Coral became jealous again looking at them. So she told her friends her plan was to pour juice on Leia. Coral believed that her friends had her back because apparently they all laughed and agreed to help her. Leia had on a blush dress, so the drink would have easily been visible. The plan was for Leia to leave so Coral could dance with Brad. But as the group made their way over to Leia, one of the girls pushed the cup up so it spilled back on Coral. The girl said, "Oops," and her friends began laughing at her. She ran out crying and called her dad to pick her up. Later that night, the girls had told Coral that she was just being mean and vindictive at this point, so they were tired of her behavior. Then they removed her from the group chat. They added Leia to the group, and she told me everything when she got back. At school, Coral tried to apologize to her friends, but they ignored her, so she left school. We spent the whole day looking for her and found her at her aunt's. She was truthful with her aunt, and she explained that her behavior is what caused her to lose her friends. We were there at that point and complained everyone was against her. Later that night, Coral tried to take her life. We found her in time, so now she's spending time at the hospital. I really don't know where to go from here. My house has been peaceful and I feel bad that I feel good about that, but I hope that Coral gets the help she needs. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.